Xiang Beifei fled hastily, covering a kilometer in a mere instant. Yet he still underestimated the colossal creature. The behemoth continued to crawl out from the earth, with one head alone spanning a kilometer, and its other body parts buried underground were unimaginably more terrifying. As the giant beast emerged, the entire plain was shrouded in darkness, with sand and rocks flying everywhere, as if the world was pouring down soil without end. A sight that filled onlookers with alarm. Boom! Countless tentacles rose from the ground, and almost in an instant, they swung towards Xiang Beifei. Each tentacle was hundreds of meters long, a yellowish-brown color, and exuded a strange odor. When these tentacles surged towards Xiang Beifei, he did not hesitate to counter. With a backhand slap, two bricks buzzed together, and golden array patterns swept toward the yellowish-brown tentacles. The array patterns swirled onward, piercing through the creature's body. The writhing tentacles were quickly immobilized, but Xiang Beifei had still greatly underestimated the desolate beast. Though only one tentacle was blocked by the golden array, the problem was that the tentacle was simply too large, and there were too many of them, tens of thousands at least. Each one was hundreds of meters long, and it took Xiang Beifei a long time to immobilize just one. While he was waiting for his golden array to spread, other tentacles swept towards him. But soon Xiang Beifei realized that these were not tentacles at all, but hair. The yellowish-brown tentacles were the fur of the colossal creature. Damn it all! Xiang Beifei could not help but exclaim in amazement. A single strand of hair from this thing was hundreds of meters tall. How on earth did this creature grow to such a size? But at that moment he could ill afford to ponder, for other strands of hair had already swept over. The hair was extremely disordered, but their overwhelming numbers meant Xiang Beifei would likely be flattened before he could use his bricks to fully immobilize the desolate beast. All he could do was retract his bricks and dart away. This was the first time Xiang Beifei had been at a disadvantage when using his bricks. It wasn't that the bricks were ineffective against the beast. Rather, the creature was just too massive. He estimated it might take half an hour of stationary hammering with the bricks to see if the giant desolate beast could be completely immobilized. But how could such a creature simply sit there and let Xiang Beifei hammer away at it? Boom! 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 Powerful surges rampaged in all directions, sweeping back and forth, directly aiming for Xiang Beifei's face. A white light immediately flashed over his body, respected as a criterion. With his body as the center, gravity within a 10-meter radius was reversed. As the desolate beast's thick hair was about to hit him, it was forcefully diverted by the criterion he had established and veered away, missing him completely. However, before he could even catch his breath, a tremendous pressure bore down on him, and with a whoosh, the domain he had created with respected as a criterion was shattered. The power of respected as a criterion did have its limits. Against someone of the same realm, they could easily be influenced by it, but if their strength surpassed his, they could completely break his criterion. Whoosh! 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 Countless hairs, as if freshly combed, whipped towards him again from every direction. Xiang Beifei was caught off guard by one of the hairs, feeling as if he had been struck by a massive steel plate, leaving him completely stunned. Various lights began to shine once more on Xiang Beifei's body. Stand aside. Abruptly stop. Light as a feather. In his struggle to deal with the mammoth being, he truly exhibited an array of skills. However, many of his abilities were only partially effective against the massive monster's body. The beast's advantage lay in its enormous size. While Xiang Beifei could restrict some of its hair with his powers, another part of its body, a huge tongue, would extend and lick him, making it utterly unpredictable. This creature is really tough to deal with. Xiang Beifei had to admit that he had met his match this time. If the desolate beast had been even slightly smaller, he wouldn't be fighting so awkwardly. Unfortunately, its large size was a distinct advantage. It could sustain all of Xiang Beifei's abilities and only lose the equivalent of a single sweat hair. Xiang Beifei was exasperated. Engaging with this heavenly connection realm desolate beast any longer was pointless. He needed to leave this vast plain immediately. He tried multiple times to push forward but failed each time, as the oppression grew stronger the farther he tried to go. He couldn't even cross space to advance. Left with no choice, Xiang Beifei turned around and quickly began to retreat, heading back in the direction he had come. Despite its size, the creature was still a beat slower than Xiang Beifei, who finally managed to withdraw from the Great Plain. Standing outside the plain, Xiang Beifei's expression was very grave. The vast plain seemed to be enveloped in a strong domain. Whether trying to cross through space or fly over from high above, one would face immense hindrances with no way to advance at all. The only solution seemed to be to take a detour. However, the distance of the detour was unknown, as the terrain of that region appeared to be boundless, with nobody knowing how much area it actually covered. Woof woof! Xiaohe expressed his amazement, saying that when they had just been on top of that huge body, it was like fleas on a tiger. The tiger had gotten angry and chased them as they ran. Xiang Beifei glared at Xiaohe without amusement. "It's all you're doing, isn't it? Did you just poke someone in a sensitive spot? Era, why did you stick your tail in there?" Xiang Beifei asked. "Woof." Era said it just wanted to see how deep the hole was, but somehow it had angered the other party. "Stop messing around." Xiang Beifei touched his forehead and had no choice but to find a mountainside nearby. He drilled a hole in the mountainside and sat down temporarily in the shallow hole. The recent scuffle with that bulky creature had drained much of his strength, so he needed to rest for a moment. Yumong timidly poked its head out from the pocket on Xiang Beifei's chest, still looking a bit traumatized. However, it clearly looked at Xiang Beifei with a hint of admiration, probably impressed by his abilities just now. You, Yumong whispered softly. "I don't understand." Xiang Beifei spread his hands. Yumong blinked, hesitated, and then called out again. "You better go and learn the language from Xiaohe." Xiang Beifei paid no attention to Yumong and instead took out the red bead he had obtained from the soil earlier, examining it closely. This red bead wasn't a system item, but resembled the material of a pioneering stone, emitting a familiar aura. He just didn't know what this red bead was used for. After studying it for a long time, Xiang Beifei still could not figure out the meaning of the red bead, but he didn't dwell on it and simply stored the bead away. Speaking of which, what exactly is that bulky creature? The databases of Juzhou had no detailed records, and he still did not know what that desolate beast was called. However, he had taken a photo of the desolate beast and decided to name it Earth Beast for now. If he could return to Juzhou, he would make it a reference. Xiang Beifei sat meditating in the cave all night. Even in the great desolate realm, he did not forget to train earnestly during his rest. Training helped solidify his orifice soul. Now, Yumong seemed less resistant to Xiang Beifei and was starting to communicate with Xiaohe. Xiaohe had managed to make Yumong slightly lower its guard, and it was currently learning the Yumong language. Xiaohe was very clever. Although it did not speak Yumong, it could still learn. When it had encountered the wooden Kirin, it had learned the Kirin language between woof and bark. Era also learned how to bark for a long time, but it naturally understood human language, so it saved the trouble. Anyway, each of them spoke their own language and they could understand each other just fine. Xiang Beifei was now waiting for Xiaohe to understand Yumong, so that it could translate it into bark for Xiang Beifei. This process was a bit complicated, likely involving Yumong to bark, then to human speech. Xiang Beifei admired himself for being able to deal with these abnormal little fellows. Xiang Beifei did not try to cross the plain but started moving along the edge of the plain to avoid agitating the earth beast again. With the help of a compass, even if Xiang Beifei took a detour, the issue wasn't too significant. He just had to continue adjusting his direction intermittently. It took him about 3 days to finally bypass the Great Plain, and the direction on the compass finally normalized, which was a relief. However, he had not flown far when he encountered a huge lake ahead. The lake was vast, stretching as far as the eye could see. The compass always pointed toward the distant horizon, indicating he had to cross the lake. The more he walked forward, the more one thing baffled Xiang Beifei. The great desolate realm was simply too vast. Just the plain where the earth beast had been almost matched half of Juzhou's territory. Compared to the vast expanse of the Great Plain, the mainland of Juzhou covering millions of square kilometers, was practically a mini-island. If the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage wanted to expand its territory, it could easily capture other races for confrontation. Why did it have to invade Jizhou? Was this great desolate realm not sufficient for their amusements? Xiang Beifei sat on a small boat formed from breath soil, beginning to cross the lake. Flying and traversing space were also very consuming of spiritual power. In such a place he would paddle if he could to save some energy. The small boat was just big enough for Xiang Beifei alone. Though made of sand and soil, it was incredibly fast. Xiang Beifei used a beast pill as a power source to propel the earth boat, allowing him to save his spiritual power. He also used a beast pill from an invisible beast to cloak the small boat, avoiding any unwanted encounters with desolate beasts. The journey was lonely, but thankfully, Xiaohe and Era were there to chat and relieve the boredom. Fortunately, Xiaohe had finally clarified what Yumong had said, and during the exchanges between Xiaohe and Yumong, an unexpected discovery had struck Xiang Beifei. Yumong understands what I'm saying? Xiang Beifei was quite taken aback. Xiaohe nodded, explaining that Yumong was born knowing what Xiang Beifei was saying. It didn't understand Xiaohe's language, but curiously, it understood Xiang Beifei's words without knowing why. However, because Xiang Beifei looked just like those people, it was always afraid that black tentacles would suddenly spring from Xiang Beifei's body, which made it very resistant to him. Strange Era can understand human speech, you can understand human speech, Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage can understand human speech, and even the newly born Yumong can understand human speech. Can everyone in the world understand human speech? Why was it that all intelligent species seemed to understand human speech, but them, being humans, couldn't understand other species' languages? Suddenly, Xiang Beifei recalled Shen Tongtong, whom he had rescued from the clutches of Huajuyu in the Great Desolate Realm. Shen Tongtong had awakened the SR-level beast language system, capable of learning the languages of various desolate beasts. It seemed that the ghostly visage had targeted her precisely because of this ability. Were these events related in some way? Since you understand my speech, then you should know that those desolate beasts called ghostly visage and I am human. We belong to different species. They specialize in killing our people and then use our images to slaughter your tribesmen. Xiang Beifei explained to Yumong. Yumong blinked, probably recalling the strength Xiang Beifei displayed the day before, and its wariness towards him seemed to lessen. Don't worry. No black tentacles are going to sprout from my body. Xiang Beifei shrugged. Yumong moved closer to Xiaohe. Although less wary, it still hadn't completely trusted him. Do I look like a bad guy? Xiang Beifei asked. Yumong hesitated and then nodded. Era laughed uproariously beside him, mocking Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei was at a loss. This little fellow was probably just a newborn whelp, with a too simplistic understanding of good and evil. The trauma inflicted by the ghostly visage, which had slaughtered its tribespeople, made its caution understandable. Xiaohe, ask it why the ghostly visage targeted the Yumong species. Xiang Beifei said. Woof, woof woof. Xiaohe had already asked, and Yumong didn't know. It had just been born, rooted at its father's feet, when inexplicably, the ghostly visage attacked. In its dying moments, its father used his enormous tree roots to wrap around Yumong, shoving it into the soil for cover, saving it from disaster. This incident had happened about 5 days before Xiang Beifei arrived here. That's really strange, Xiang Beifei pondered. But at that moment, Xiaohe suddenly sniffed the air alertly and barked forward. Xiang Beifei furrowed his brows and looked ahead. They had been sailing all along, and while the lake surface was usually calm, occasionally some desolate beasts would surface to bask in the sun. Xiang Beifei hadn't disturbed them, allowing the little boat to automatically avoid them. But now a pungent smell of blood wafted from ahead. Suddenly, Xiang Beifei saw a huge pile of shredded flesh drifting by in front of him. The pile of flesh was white, as if it had been soaked in water for a long time and was nearly putrid. It was unclear what desolate beast it came from. Some of its skin still bore steel-like barbs. Is there a fight between desolate beasts ahead? Xiang Beifei frowned. Having witnessed fierce battles between formidable desolate beasts during his journey across the great desolate realm, becoming accustomed to the sight of these creatures fighting almost daily. The closer I walked to the front, the more chunks of blood floated on the lake's surface, resembling a massive desolate beast torn asunder by something. It looked particularly shocking. But strangely, there was no blood. The stuff floating on the lake's surface did not stain the water with blood, and I didn't know whether it was because it had floated for too long and the lake water had diluted the blood or for some other reason. However, Xiang Beifei could always catch faint whiffs of a bloody scent. He reached out from the small boat and grabbed a piece of flesh, but as soon as the flesh left the water, dark purple fresh blood seeped from the originally pale flesh. It quickly covered the entire piece of flesh and started dripping down to the lake's surface. The purple blood floated on the lake, showing no sign of dissolving. Logically, a drop of blood falling into the water should dilute in it, but the blood of this desolate beast maintained the state of oil droplets upon contact with the water, showing no signs of dissipating. Eh? Xiang Beifei felt it was odd and returned the piece of flesh back into the lake. As the flesh entered the water, the purple blood began rapidly retracting, pulling back into the white flesh as if forcibly stuffed back in, and even the purple droplets that had just fallen on the lake's surface were pushed by the gentle ripples of the lake back into the flesh. This greatly surprised Xiang Beifei. Was it a problem with the dismembered flesh of the desolate beast, or the lake water? Heh, back off. Seeing this, Era stuck out its neck and spat a glob of saliva toward the lake. The saliva it spat out still floated on the lake's surface, like small droplets showing no sign of dissolving. It seemed the problem was with the lake water, perhaps preventing the flesh here from bleeding. Woof woof. Xiaohei, its eyes whirling, told Era. Try using Xiao Xiang's water spray. Era nodded foolishly, ran to the stern, lifted a leg, and then whoosh peed an arc that fell onto the lake's surface. The pea fell on the lake's surface and still did not dissipate, but floated on the water's surface like oil, congregating together. Strange. Does this lake water also have this ability? Xiang Beifei pondered briefly and then cut a wound on his fingertip, squeezing out a drop of blood into the water. Plop! The blood bobbed on the lake's surface, like a blood-colored bean, not blending into the lake water. He dipped his fingertip on the water's surface, and the blood floating on it involuntarily moved toward the gap in his fingertip, as if a mysterious force was pushing the droplet. Then whoosh! The droplet was squeezed into his wound. He lifted his finger out of the water, and the droplet flowed out again. It seemed as if the lake did not like foreign objects polluting it. Any dropped blood had to be returned. Truly is a bizarre lake. Xiang Beifei decided to continue moving forward to see what was happening. He had the small boat speed up further, with chunks of flesh continuously appearing ahead but getting pushed to the back by him. At this moment, Xiaohei stood at the stern, suddenly patted the wooden Kirin's head, and then pointed at the stern, quite astonished. Xiang Beifei and Era turned to look simultaneously and were stunned for a moment. Their small boat was already moving quite fast, yet behind them, a swiftly moving shadow tirelessly followed. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be Era's pee from earlier. Not just that, but also the saliva Era had spat out. After Xiang Beifei stopped the boat, those things also rapidly halted behind them, floating on the water's surface at the boat's stern. Xiaohei exclaimed in surprise, Era, your pee is chasing you. Ayo? Era extended its lengthy tail, scratching its head foolishly, not quite understanding. Xiaohei guessed seriously, they probably want to return to your body. Era's eyes widened in shock. Xiaohei reasoned, considering what just happened, if you fall into the water, I think they will crawl back inside. As for where they will enter, probably wherever they came out from. Wine? Suddenly, Era clenched its mouth tightly, clamped its legs together, and blocked a certain spot with its tail, its eyes nearly bulging out. It looked frightened, hurriedly nudging Xiang Beifei with its head, signaling him to quickly start the boat and leave this place. Xiang Beifei watched the silly, scared creature, then sped up the small boat. After traveling another 2 kilometers, He glanced back and saw Era's belongings still earnestly trailing behind, seemingly harboring an inextricable affection for Era. Era's entire face turned dark. Awu, awu, awu. Era urged Xiang Beifei to quickly find a solution, as it didn't want to experience the scenario Xiaohe had pictured. Now you know not to urinate just anywhere, right? When we're out, we must have a sense of public duty, Xiang Beifei said. Xiang Beifei unleashed a burst of spiritual power, trying to directly destroy Era's belongings. But as soon as his spiritual power touched the water, a strange force in the lake water swirled away, and his force struck the surface, kicking up waves. Quickly, the pile of stuff gathered again. Why can't it be destroyed? Xiang Beifei was very surprised. The lake water here seemed ever more astonishing. Era looked agitated, insisting Xiang Beifei find a solution. Are you stupid? Can't you fly? As long as you don't fall into the water, isn't that fine? Xiang Beifei said. Era solemnly stroked his chin and nodded slightly. This is a good idea. Xiang Beifei ignored the simpleton and continued forward. The lake was as eerie as the vast plain they had just crossed, and it was best to leave this place quickly. The lake was incredibly expansive, boundless. Had the lake surface not been so calm, without a single wave, Xiang Beifei might have thought he was crossing a great sea. About 30 kilometers ahead, a rock appeared on the lake's surface, much like a reef in the sea. This reef showed only its top, about 1 meter high, and was square-shaped, though its edges were not particularly regular. It was probably only big enough for 2 or 3 people to stand on. The surface of the rock was quite flat, as if cut by a knife. Xiang Beifei stopped about 30 meters from the rock, watching it from a distance, not daring to approach rashly. Learning from the lesson of the recent encounter with the giant earth beast, Xiang Beifei was now wiser. A rock suddenly appearing on this endless lake surface was certainly strange. He carefully extended his spiritual power toward it, searching for anything unusual about the rock, but it seemed to be just a normal stone, nothing special about it. Xiang Beifei moved closer again. At this moment, he suddenly heard a whooshing sound, followed by turbulent waves erupting from the distant lake surface as countless black tentacles burst forth from the lake bed. The black tentacles converged in the air, interweaving with each other, then started to retract. In just a moment, a blood-stained man appeared in the air. This man had a bloody, gaping hole right through the middle of his head, piercing his brain. Ghost mustache of remnant visage. When Yumong saw the ghost mustache of remnant visage, it suddenly grabbed Xiang Beifei's clothes, its expression turning panicked. After a long moment, it seemed to realize something and looked at Xiang Beifei, hesitating whether to let go. I told you, I'm not like those creatures. I am of the human race, they are of the parasitic race. They killed my kind and then took their forms to appear, Xiang Beifei reassured. Yumong thought for a long time. Considering Xiang Beifei's prowess, it clearly trusted him more. What's with these guys? Why won't they leave us alone? Xiang Beifei kept his small boat very concealed. Although it was invisible, he still moved a bit further back, wanting to see why these creatures appeared here again, what they were doing underwater just now. The man with the brain hole floated in midair, surveying the entire lake surface. After a while, the lake surface produced another splashing sound, and countless more black tentacles surged up, forming 7 or 8 people in the air. These were both men and women, all unmistakably in the guise of pioneers. Seeing so many scarred ghost whiskers of remnant visages made Yumong even more panicked. It clung to Xiang Beifei's clothing, its little eyes peering out, fearfully watching these ghost whiskers of remnant visages. Still haven't found it? Brain Hole asked. Yes, still not found. The lake water here is very strange. One of the ghost whiskers of remnant visage with only half a head left replied. Brain Hole pondered for a long time before he spoke gravely. Go check there again. But that place. A long-haired woman with a face as purple as if poisoned hesitated. The others also glanced at each other, a look of apprehension in their eyes, seemingly reluctant to go. We must go, Brain Hole stated emphatically. Yes. All the ghost whiskers of remnant visages could only respond. Brainhole turned and walked toward the reef on the water surface. He stood on the rock with his back to Xiang Beifei, then walked forward, quickly appearing to sink suddenly, gradually disappearing on the lake surface. The other ghost whiskers of remnant visages also followed Brainhole, gradually disappearing beyond the other side of the rock. What are these guys looking for? Xiang Beifei stood on the small boat for a moment, then, worried that the ripples from the boat might attract attention, he retracted the boat made from breath soil and flew directly over to the rock. Once he landed on the rock, he discovered steps descending on the other side, leading downward step by step into the water. It seemed that the group of ghost whiskers of remnant visages had used these steps to walk into the water. Strange, why do they have to go through here to enter the lake? Can't they just walk in from somewhere else? Xiang Beifei wanted to see what was unusual about this stone, so he decided to dive into the water himself to check. But the wooden Kirin, having shrunk in size, was perched on his shoulder, and Era was right at his feet. Era, quickly take that pea back. It looks disgusting, Xiang Beifei said. Ow, ow, ow. Era protested. He would never let such a thing happen. Then go stay over there. Xiang Beifei extended his finger, flicked Era's head, and sent it flying out. The liquid under Xiang Beifei's feet immediately sputtered towards where Era had gone. Era stopped in midair, looked down at the fluid it had created, and flew a few meters to the left. Unswervingly, the liquid followed. It then flew to the right, and the stuff still merrily tagged along, sticking to Era like a stubborn plaster. Xiang Beifei moved a few steps to the side, covered his body with spiritual power, then sank into the lake water. The lake water was isolated from him by his spiritual power and did not stain his body. Perhaps because there was ample light here, the underwater visibility was clear. However, bizarrely, there seemed to be no bottom to the stone from underneath the water surface. It was as if the stone was floating. Xiang Beifei resurfaced, then looked again at the stone. He realized there was something very peculiar about this place and decided to check under the lake, but it could only be done via the stairs he'd used before. Should I go check it out? Honestly, Xiang Beifei didn't feel like confronting the ghost mustache of remnant visage right now since this place was the wilderness outside of his domain. Besides, the ghost whiskers might have a trick up their sleeves. If there was a heavenly connection realm priest around, he could likely be at a disadvantage. Forget it. I should head to Chun Ho instead, he thought. Xiang Beifei decided to not bother with these matters and hurriedly find the Ho as a priority. However, just after he had flown past the stone on the lake surface, the compass on Mao Ho suddenly reversed direction, pointing backward. Xiang Beifei was quite amazed. Why did the compass point back all of a sudden? He flew back a few steps and landed on the rock. Then the water compass suddenly changed back to water. Wait, this place is Chun Ho? Xiang Beifei left the rock and circled it a few times, discovering that no matter which direction he went, the compass always pointed toward this rock. Xiaohei barked in confusion. Isn't Chun Ho supposed to be a mountain? I don't know, Xiang Beifei responded. That was precisely what Xiang Beifei wanted to know as well. Apart from Yin Ho, which he had never visited, the other three Ho he had encountered, Zi Ho, Cho Ho, and Mao Ho, had all appeared in the form of mountains. Only here was the Ho just a rock, and moreover a rock floating on the lake surface. Could it be that this rock was the mountaintop, and the entire mountain was actually buried under the lake? But he hadn't seen any sign of a mountain under the lake earlier either, which also seemed hard to explain. Wherever the Ho appears, there are traces of ghost mustache of remnant visage. It seems that these creatures are also looking for the Ho, he thought. But what was the purpose of the ghostly visage searching for the Ho? Xiang Beifei didn't even know what he was searching for. He was just trying to find Xiang Tianqing and his wife. But clearly, like the couple, the ghostly visage had some purpose in coming here. However, it was obvious they had found quite a few Ho already. Xiang Beifei landed directly on the rock, preparing to dive into the water. If this was indeed Chun Ho, he had to find the blood altar there and create a compass. Splash! Xiang Beifei cautiously stepped towards the steps behind the rock, stepping onto the first stair in the water. As Xiang Beifei's feet touched the water, it seemed as though it slickly moved aside, not wetting his body. He pondered for a bit, then withdrew his spiritual power, and found that his clothes were actually still dry. "Era, are you coming or not?" Xiang Beifei looked up and asked. Era looked down at the liquid beneath its feet and shook its head frantically, scared that the fluid would be forced back into its body, which was definitely not a pleasant experience. "Woof, woof." Xiaohei mocked Era for being a scaredy cat. "Then you wait here and keep watch for me. Alert me immediately if there's any situation," Xiang Beifei said. Era, too, was a creature from the Spirit Gathering book and could communicate with Xiang Beifei telepathically. After leaving Era on the outside, Xiang Beifei continued downwards. The steps that were just now invisible at the bottom of the lake became increasingly numerous, layer by layer, as if they appeared in tandem with his descent. These steps weren't connected to each other. They were individual slabs about half a meter in length, floating in the middle of the lake water as though held up by some mysterious force, arranging themselves into a path leading into the abyss. He descended deeply, counting roughly over 2,000 steps. By an estimate of 20 centimeters per step, he was now 400 to 500 meters below the lake's surface. The light from above the lake could no longer penetrate down here, and visibility was getting weaker. The stone steps beneath his feet seemed to be covered in moss, slippery and emanating a faint green glow, barely outlining the edges of the steps. Whoosh! At that moment, several dark shadows darted around the steps in the water. Xiang Beifei was on high alert, looking to his left. However, those shadows quickly vanished into the pitch-black water, and he saw nothing. "Is it the ghost mustache of remnant visage?" He stood in place and observed for a while, but still could not make out what had just flashed by in the darkness. If it was ghost whiskers, he didn't understand why they suddenly left the steps. Xiang Beifei intended to chase after them for a clearer look, but as soon as he left the steps by about a meter, the steps beneath him flickered as if they were about to disappear. With his strong perception, he was certain it was not the disappearance of light, but the disappearance of presence. He frowned and quickly stepped back onto the steps, which then wobbled into visibility again. He had a premonition that if he strayed too far from these steps, he would likely lose the path entirely. Xiang Beifei did not concern himself with the shadow in the water, instead continuing downward. After descending for a minute more, the steps on the ground suddenly smoothed out, and then he found himself on a bridge. Strictly speaking, it didn't resemble a stone bridge, but more a stone pathway floating in the water, similar to how the stone slabs that formed the steps extended out flatly in the water to become a pathway spanning across the lake. Xiang Beifei stood at the edge of the stone pathway and looked down, still unable to see the lakebed, only the dark abyss. He then looked ahead, and it seemed like there was a mountain, possibly situated at the lake's bottom. The dim light, coupled with severe visibility obstruction, prevented even Xiang Beifei from discerning anything about the mountain. But the stone pathway under his feet continued to piece together toward that mountain, whose contours were vaguely discernible, occasionally seeming to have something stretch out from it before quickly retracting, as if desolate beasts were clinging to it, which was extremely strange. Xiang Beifei observed the mountain for a long while and then shifted his gaze forward, soon spotting 8 ghostly visages on the stone pathway ahead, heading toward that mountain. They treaded very cautiously, but as soon as Xiang Beifei caught sight of them, they vanished into the darkness. Xiang Beifei used his spiritual power to disguise himself and then hurried forward, wanting to see what these fellows were up to. The closer he got to this pitch-dark mountain, the stronger the water pressure and current seemed to be, a sense of oppression enveloping the area. He couldn't see the lake's surface when looking up, nor the lakebed when looking down, surrounded by flowing water that felt suffocating. Approaching the mountain, Xiang Beifei realized it was a coral reef, which was odd in a freshwater lake because the darkness made it hard to see far. He didn't light any lamps, worried about attracting the attention of both the ghostly visages and something else at the bottom of the lake. At that moment, he recalled Long Guoqing's witnessed by all. This ability of Long Guoqing's allowed him to see clearly in darkness and emit a light visible only to himself, aiding his illumination, invisible to others without permission. Xiang Beifei searched his inventory for a moment and only found a small piece of candle, which was a witness to all candle, provided by Long Guoqing as a spare for each member of their team during an expedition in the wilderness beyond the domain last year. It was just unfortunate that if the system items were not used for a long time, their spiritual power would gradually dissipate. The piece of candle, having been stored for a year, looked somewhat worn and was nearly ineffective. Xiang Beifei pinched the candle, and the essence of revert to simplicity acted on it, the candle rapidly returning to its original state. He then infused it with his own spiritual power, enabling its use. The candlelight flared to life, but Xiang Beifei quickly realized that something in the water was suppressing the light from the candle, so much so that its glow couldn't reach 2 meters away. This place is really sinister. Xiang Beifei looked at the candle in his hand, which was on the verge of flickering out, yet he continued to walk forward with it, as it was better than nothing. He proceeded along the stone-paved road and saw a cave ahead. The cave was very dark, and from within, indistinct sounds reached him. The sounds were ethereal. Whenever he tried to listen carefully, it seemed as though he heard nothing. But when Xiang Beifei was about to dismiss them, the sounds appropriately resurfaced. However, just as he was about to enter the cave, Xiang Beifei suddenly felt something and sharply turned to look behind him. There was nothing behind him, still engulfed in darkness, with only a faint blue glow emitted from the stone path. Strange. Xiang Beifei frowned slightly, then entered the cave and disappeared into its darkness. The instant he entered the cave, a pair of dark purple eyes appeared in the darkness behind him, standing out starkly as they stared in the direction Xiang Beifei had gone. Whoosh! The shadow vanished in a flash. Xiang Beifei proceeded along the pitch-dark cave, no longer able to see the ghost whiskers of remnant visage ahead, but he could see black aquatic plants covering the cave's ceiling. As Xiang Beifei drew near, the plants gently floated and turned in the water towards him, eerily facing him. Once Xiang Beifei had passed, they also turned to follow his direction very bizarrely. Xiang Beifei didn't linger and quickly walked towards the cave's exit. What confronted him was a very peculiar structure, resembling a tall palace, at least 100 meters high. This palace stood in the water, its contours vaguely visible and constructed from individual stone slabs. But these stone slabs were not closely fitted together. Every corner still had a slight gap through which some fish were seen swimming. Xiang Beifei did not see the shadow of the ghost whiskers, which probably had entered the palace. He immediately hurried into the palace. But at that moment, a chaotic scream suddenly echoed from ahead. The sound was particularly harrowing, so clear as it reverberated across the lake. Xiang Beifei's brow furrowed slightly. He immediately ran along the stone path into the palace, but as soon as he stepped in, the screams abruptly stopped, followed by a series of strange whispers, as if someone sighed in his ear. It was chilling. When he entered the palace, instead of a grand hall, he saw a labyrinth of twisted paths leading in different directions. There was no telling which direction the ghostly visage had gone. Xiang Beifei randomly chose one of the paths and ran forward. After taking a couple of turns, he suddenly heard voices in the darkness. "Quick! Where's the piercing stone?" A voice mixed with shock and anger came from the darkness, which Xiang Beifei recognized. It was from Brain Hole. "I don't know. Something attacked us," came another voice, that of a woman. "Don't panic. Everyone gather over here." Rustling noises converged ahead as Brain Hole summoned his subordinates, sounding very furious. They seemed to have separated. At that moment, Xiang Beifei suddenly saw a severed tentacle at the corner up ahead. He dashed to the tentacle and upon closer inspection, he realized it belonged to ghostly visage, apparently having been freshly cut, with purple blood still oozing from it. Purple blood. Xiang Beifei didn't remember the blood of the ghostly visage being purple. He shone his candle on it and soon found that what appeared to be purple blood were, in fact, weird purple bugs, gloppy like mucus sticking together. If not observed closely, they could be mistaken for a liquid. These purple bugs were gnawing at the black tentacle, but as soon the black was consumed, the purple bugs suddenly turned and uniformly eyed Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei was slightly taken aback. These bizarre bugs could actually see him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More and more purple bugs approached from out of the darkness, as if they were all looking at the candle in Xiang Beifei's hand. Then, suddenly, all of the purple bugs uniformly dissolved into the water, disappearing from sight. Can they see the light of witnessed by all? Xiang Beifei realized something was very wrong with the bugs here. Though witnessed by all was supposed to be visible only to the candlebearer, it wouldn't be surprising if some desolate beasts from the outer realms could sense the system's fluctuations. He did not continue using the candle but snuffed it out and was about to choose a different path when he suddenly stepped on something. Looking down, he found a blood-drenched human skull with half its face eaten away. The eyes of the skull bulged, staring fixedly at him. Xiang Beifei was startled by the skull. He hadn't sensed it when he walked past it earlier. Xiang Beifei was about to kick the head flying, but quickly realized that the head looked familiar. He remembered that one of the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage had looked just like this, which meant that it was one of their parasitic bodies. As Xiang Beifei squatted down, the purple bugs covering the head abruptly vanished. He picked up the head and found that the body of the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage was gone. Glancing to the side, he saw a severed arm and a half-body, also covered with purple bugs. Looking further ahead, he saw some black tendrils twitching on the ground, seemingly at their last gasp. What here could harm a ghost mustache of Remnant Visage? Xiang Beifei was quite surprised. But then he suddenly thought of the cold air of Ziho and the stream water of Mao Ho, which were the bane of the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage. Since this was Chun Ho, did that mean that this place also contained such a thing? Was it these purple bugs? He had intended to use the breath soil to catch one of the purple bugs, but hadn't expected them to disappear too quickly, not giving him a chance. Piercing stone, did I just hear you cry out in pain? Xiang Beifei was still pondering when a voice suddenly came from behind him. This voice made Xiang Beifei startle again. Because he was still disguised with his spiritual power, how could the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage see him? But when he checked carefully, he realized his spiritual disguise had vanished without him knowing when. Strange. Xiang Beifei grew cautious. Was it a problem with this palace? However, he quickly calmed down and spoke up. I ran into some trouble just now and got attacked by something. Xiang Beifei turned around, placing the head behind his back. Because it was dark here, no one could see anyone, and their vision was severely suppressed. They could only faintly make out a figure. That's good. Lord Kuei was calling us just now. We need to hurry over, said the person, walking forward 2 steps. Xiang Beifei frowned and inquired, Didn't you hear something strange in my voice? Did I? I'm not very clear. The holy relic of Fubei can harm us and has suppressed all our senses. It's good enough that I can hear you speak. Why do you ask? The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage asked. No reason, my throat was torn to shreds earlier, and I found I couldn't heal it. There's something creepy in the darkness? Xiang Beifei said, moving the head behind him again. You were attacked by the holy relic of Fubei? Asked the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage. Yeah. Barely got away with my life. Xiang Beifei saw that the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage had come within about a meter of him, but he seemed not to realize that he wasn't one of them. I can't even smell you from this close, Xiang Beifei tested. Isn't that normal? I can't even see you here. I can just barely make out a blurry shape to distinguish you. It's too oppressive. The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage complained bitterly. After the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage got to about a meter away, Xiang Beifei could see clearly that he was a pioneer with a huge wound on his side, as if it had been punctured by the claw of a desolate beast, likely the cause of the pioneer's death. Xiang Beifei, accustomed to naming them after their injuries, named this one Lei Chadao. Can't you see me clearly? Xiang Beifei was surprised because, being so close, he could still see the other guy clearly, his face in plain view. Isn't that a stupid question? Can you see me clearly? Lei Chadao retorted. No, it's too weird here. But Xiang Beifei quickly realized something. The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage was actually suppressed here, unable to recognize him. This was his chance. Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage couldn't see Xiang Beifei even from such a short distance, so he could try impersonating this piercing stone. Maybe he could find out what this group was up to. Xiang Beifei followed behind Lei Chadao, walking out of the passage and heading towards another. Even someone as powerful as Lord Kuei was restrained? Xiang Beifei inquired. All the same, why do you feel strange? Haven't we discussed these things? Lei Chadao asked. I just feel it's alarming that someone as powerful as him was also restrained, Xiang Beifei said. Restrained means restrained. It's the same for anyone. Let's hurry up and not keep him waiting too long. Lei Chadao turned and headed outside. Okay. Xiang Beifei followed Lei Chadao quietly, observing his surroundings. The place was indeed peculiar. The passage was enclosed by stone slabs, which were not sealed and had gaps between them. If the light was a bit brighter, one might have been able to see the other side of the walls clearly. They soon turned a corner and saw Brain Hole and the others ahead. What happened? Brain Hole asked darkly. We were attacked. Something attacked me, Xiang Beifei said. Are you all right? Brain Hole asked again. Xiang Beifei was relieved to find that Brain Hole indeed hadn't recognized him. I ran out, but that purple bug almost dragged me away, Xiang Beifei said. You were attacked by the holy relic of Fubei? Brain Hole asked. Yes. Xiang Beifei wasn't clear on what exactly the holy relic of Fubei was, but he guessed that this was what Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage called the thing on top that devoured spiritual power. These things were lethal to them. You're lucky to have escaped, another woman with a blue face said. Yes. Xiang Beifei decided it was best to speak less to avoid slipping up. Stick close, and don't get separated again. Brain Hole didn't ask any further and continued walking ahead. Xiang Beifei walked at the very end, right beside Lei Chadao. He really wanted to ask these people what they were looking for but restrained himself. Probably because of the attack on Piercing Stone, every Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage became vigilant, their attention fixed on their surroundings, not even noticing an uninvited guest in their midst. They soon reached a fork in the road. The stone path here turned into steps, branching off in different directions. Lord Kuei, which way should we go? Halfhead asked. Brain Hole stood pondering which road to take, but at that moment, Xiang Beifei suddenly heard a strange sound, like someone sighing heavily. He looked in the direction of the sound and paused. About 5 or 6 meters in front of the left staircase, there clearly stood a blurred figure. Although he couldn't see the person's specific features, those purple eyes were shining brightly in the darkness. What is this guy? Xiang Beifei watched the figure cautiously, glancing back at Brain Hole and the others. But this group of Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage seemed like blind men with open eyes, unable to see such an obvious person. Even if this group had poor eyesight, the shining purple glow of those eyes was as conspicuous as guiding lights. Could they really not see them? Xiang Beifei quickly realized that the suppression here was very noticeable on the Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage. No wonder they were reluctant to come down when they were on the lake surface earlier. The creature with the big purple eyes seemed to know that these people couldn't see it, which is why it fearlessly stood so close. Left, Brain Hole made the decision. At that moment, the purple shadow leaped upward, disappearing into the darkness. Xiang Beifei had no way to warn these Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage, because he couldn't explain why he could see them. Besides, he didn't want to alert them. The life or death of Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage didn't matter to him. Here, he only needed to ensure his own survival and find the blood altar. They began ascending the stairs on the left, and after climbing 21 steps, they arrived inside a spacious secret chamber. Though it was called a secret chamber, it wasn't exactly one. The chamber, including its walls and ceilings, were made of stone slabs everywhere there were gaps. Xiang Beifei had just entered this chamber when he suddenly found many pairs of purple eyes staring at them through the gaps between the stone slabs. Even Xiang Beifei felt chills now. What kind of place was this? Why were there so many purple eyes in the cracks between the stones? Most importantly, the group of Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage still hadn't noticed anything unusual. It seems everything here is normal, Lei Chadao said. Normal, my ass? Xiang Beifei couldn't help but curse inwardly. However, the other ghost mustache of remnant visage also breathed a sigh of relief. Brainhole said, "Hurry and find the puppet child." Puppet child? Xiang Beifei was puzzled. Was this their purpose for coming here? But what is the puppet child? While keeping an eye on those purple eyes, he pondered, but the other ghost mustache of remnant visage had already started feeling around. They began searching cautiously in this secret chamber. As they moved, those several pairs of eyes immediately disappeared, fading into the darkness. Xiang Beifei also pretended to search, although he didn't truly know what he was looking for. But when in Rome, do as the Romans do, he still had to put on a show. Xiang Beifei slowly approached the walls with gaps, cautious of the eerie purple eyes. He was worried that something might drag him away in the darkness, but he soon discovered that these stone slabs were covered with murals. The murals were carved with some sharp blades, cut deep into the stone. The depicted scene was a high mountain adorned with many desolate beasts. Since there were cracks between the stones, the murals weren't continuous. As he moved forward, the first things he saw were various desolate beasts, most of which he recognized, but some he had never seen before. Where exactly could this puppet child be? Xiang Beifei approached Lei Chadao and asked casually. "I don't know either. If we can't find the puppet child here soon, we'll face severe punishment when we return," Lei Chadao said fearfully. "But in such a dark place with our senses so heavily suppressed, how can we find the puppet child? We can't even see clearly what the puppet child looks like," Xiang Beifei said. "Don't worry, this puppet child is something that the demon god placed here long ago specifically to restrain them. It will resonate with us." "Them?" Xiang Beifei asked, puzzled. "Yes, they resisted the puppet child but were still wiped out. However, the puppet child seems to have been hidden somewhere. This is the most troublesome part for us. They were annihilated, yet still left us with troubles," Lei Chadao explained. "Why did they have to be exterminated?" Xiang Beifei inquired. "Are you joking? The very existence of their entire species was to nurture the puppet child. When the time was ripe, if not harvested, then why keep them?" Lei Chadao retorted. Xiang Beifei frowned deeply, then turned his head to look at Yumong, who had been hiding in his chest all along. Yumong was always filled with dread towards the Brainhole people and hadn't moved for a long while. So, was Lord Jia also going to do this? Xiang Beifei thought of Broken Throat. Yes, exactly the same. The existence of those Yumeng was also for nurturing the puppet child, but it seems like there was a problem with the puppet child over at Lord Jia's side. Speaking of which, don't you already know all this? Why are you still asking me? Lei Chadao said. Strange, Xiang Beifei remarked. Broken Throat and his ghost mustache of remnant visage had exterminated the Yumeng, whereas Brainhole was leading this group of ghost mustache of remnant visage here to search for the unknown species puppet child. What did this puppet child mean to the demon god in the mouths of the ghost mustache of remnant visage? At this moment, another ghostly visage approached Xiang Beifei, speaking incoherently. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Xiang Beifei, you fool. Can't you speak human language properly? Xiang Beifei had always been puzzled why some ghost mustache of remnant visage could speak human language completely when parasitizing a person, while others could only repeat what a person said before death. He didn't know whether it was because of a mismatch with the body or a lack of intelligence that prevented them from acquiring their host's linguistic abilities. Most importantly, Xiang Beifei couldn't understand a word these people said. Strictly speaking, what they were saying was human language, but because they couldn't speak completely, they used the intonation of human speech to express their own language, much like Yumong's daily pronunciation of the words Yu and Yumeng. If he didn't grasp their intonation, Xiang Beifei wouldn't be able to understand them. This, I don't want to die, seemed to consider Xiang Beifei a comrade and clearly intended to say something to Xiang Beifei, which caused him quite a headache. Xiang Beifei was pondering how to respond to this, I don't want to die. But just then, a scream suddenly came from the opposite side. Ah! This ah attracted all the attention of the ghost mustache of remnant visage, and he wondered if it was another ghostly visage's way of speaking. However, at that moment, he suddenly glimpsed many purple lights flashing beneath the floor, converging under the feet of the Ah. Soon after, the floor slabs cracked open, and the Ah disappeared into the darkness. Lu Tu. Lei Chideo's face changed color. He quickly ran towards the place where Lu Tu had made the sound. However, by the time they arrived at Lu Tu's position, Lu Tu had already vanished. What happened? How could Lu Tu have disappeared? Brain Hole asked in a deep voice. I don't know. I never saw where he was standing, the blue-faced woman said. Everyone had been spreading out to look for the so-called puppet child, and no one was paying attention to anyone else. This group of ghost mustache of remnant visage couldn't see the purple eyes in the dark and had no idea that danger was right beside them. Xiang Beifei didn't offer a warning. He needed to observe quietly and just ensure his own safety. Brain Hole inquired from the others. Have you found anything? Everyone shook their heads. Keep looking, Brain Hole commanded. Everyone quickly dispersed, beginning to search the room. Xiang Beifei took a few steps, then suddenly heard several faint sounds. Turning his head, he saw that the stone slabs near the entrance had started to float up, covering the original entrance like pieces of a puzzle. The entrance had disappeared. Xiang Beifei immediately ran over and pushed against the stone slabs that were blocking the entrance, only to find that they wouldn't budge. He looked through the cracks of the stone slabs toward the stairway he had come through, but the stairway had vanished. The stone slabs that had formed the stairs were now moving, rearranging like building blocks into a different pattern, weaving into each other, and soon all he could see was a wall. These moving stone slabs? Are they being controlled? Xiang Beifei frowned deeply as he looked around the dark room. It wasn't a sealed room, yet it was eerie in every corner. It seemed like a grand palace constructed from mechanical stone slabs, for since the stone slabs could move, they could form a secret passage or a hidden chamber at any moment. Sha-sha, sha-sha, sha-sha. The soft sounds of friction rose, and Xiang Beifei squatted down to look into the cracks of the stone slabs down below. He quickly saw Lu Tu's body underneath the slabs, apparently being dragged by something. Lu Tu was still moving, his mouth wide open, as if trying to call for help, but his mouth was stuffed with purple light, rendering him silent. At that moment, the stone slabs below moved again, quickly blocking the view of him. There's an exit here. I don't know if Lu Tu went this way, said the blue-faced woman on the other side. Everyone immediately ran toward her, and upon entering the passage, Brain Hole spoke in a low voice. Stay alert. Something's not right here. They continued along the passage, and in the darkness, no one could see what lay ahead. They hadn't run far when the stone slabs on the ground began to drift again, quickly separating them from each other. The stone slabs here move. Get closer, Brain Hole shouted, his quick reflexes allowing him to jump onto the same slab as Xiang Beifei, standing together. The blue-faced woman tried to jump over too but was sent flying by the moving stone slabs. The blue-faced woman fell onto another stone slab 3 meters away, grabbing onto it, flipping up and landing on it. But before she could steady herself, swish, swish, several streaks of purple cold light flashed before her, piercing right through the blue-faced woman's body. The blue-faced woman's eyes widened in shock. Her body twitched slightly as if trying to resist, but the moment she moved, her head rolled off, and her thighs were severed. Her body was sliced into 7 or 8 pieces. The weirdest part was that the black tentacles inside of her couldn't even extend before she lost all signs of life. Everything happened so suddenly that nobody, except Xiang Beifei, saw it. Even Brain Hole, who was standing beside Xiang Beifei, didn't notice as he kept calling for the other ghost mustaches of remnant visage to quickly regroup. But in the blink of an eye, all of the ghost mustaches had been scattered. There were just various moving stone slabs in the air, as if all the passages and walls had disassembled and started to dance chaotically. Damn! The holy relic of Fubei here is beyond our expectations. We need to leave, Brain Hole said gravely. At that moment, several more streaks of purple cold light flashed towards them through the air, aiming at Brain Hole and Xiang Beifei. Brain Hole, quicker than anyone else, leaped into the air, landing precisely on the stone slab where Lei Chadao was. Xiang Beifei also ducked, avoiding the purple cold light, and then jumped to another side. But Lei Chadao wasn't so lucky. He screamed as the purple light split him vertically down the forehead, cleaving him in two. Damn! Everyone, come here. Black tentacles surged from Brain Hole's body, curling towards Xiang Beifei, attempting to pull him over. However, as soon as his tentacles touched Xiang Beifei, he suddenly recoiled in shock, bellowing, "You're not piercing stone. Who are you?" Zhu Yiji furrowed his brows. "He's just SR level. How is it possible that he caused a situation even your system can't heal? Everyone who took action today is SR," He Kaiwei said through gritted teeth. Upon hearing this, Zhu Yiji's expression also turned ugly, because the two UR levels who were defeated were both awakeners of the SR grade. Today's battle was very strange. I didn't expect Luo Yunxian to be so powerful that he could completely counter our system. How did he do it? He Kaiwei asked again. I don't know. Zhu Yiji also had this question in his mind, but he had no way of finding an answer. He glanced at He Kaiwei and then said, "Looking at you like this makes me uncomfortable. It was you who broke my left hand." He Kaiwei finally couldn't help but roar in a low voice. "I didn't do it on purpose. Luo Yunxian must have been here early, guiding from the shadows," Zhu Yiji said coldly. He Kaiwei clenched his teeth, but said nothing more. Both of them blamed the day's odd events on Luo Yunxian, but never considered the others present, and least of all Xiang Beifei. Because in their eyes, even if Xiang Beifei had high talent, he was just a martial artist in the god-refining period. How could he possibly interfere with two URs? After a while, Zhu Yiji waved his hand, and a white circle surrounded He Kaiwei. About 10 minutes later, He Kaiwei was unharmed. This was the formidable ability of a UR-level square and round rules system. If it had been a common healing system, even if SSR, it would not have recovered this quickly. He Kaiwei got up from the ground, snorting coldly inside. But just then, a breath swept through, passing the meeting room, followed by a ripple appearing in the air. Everyone turned their heads to see a ray of light forcefully breaking the seal Elder Luo had placed on He Kaiwei. The battered He Kaiwei instantly vanished from the conference room. Zhu Yiji actually returned and took advantage of the moment Elder Luo was assaulting Wu Shixian to kidnap He Kaiwei. "Luo Yunxian, I'll remember what happened today." Zhu Yiji's voice echoed in the air, issuing a harsh threat, but he had already run off without a trace. As fast as can be. "Don't worry, where can you run?" Elder Luo didn't bother to chase. Although he could blast Zhu Yiji underground in an encounter, killing him wouldn't be so simple. Then he looked at Wu Shixian lying on the ground and slowly said, "Running errands for others? And they didn't even think about saving you. Don't you find it a bit sad?" Although Wu Shixian had been beaten beyond recognition, Elder Luo's voice still reached his mind. He only then realized that Zhu Yiji and He Kaiwei were only concerned with their own escape, not bothering about him at all, which plunged him into despair. And at that moment, Zhu Yiji, who had been blasted to the ground, had already come out, turned into a beam of light in a fit of rage, reappeared in front of Elder Luo, and roared angrily at him, "Luo Yunxian, you dare! It's not your turn. Get lost." Elder Luo turned his head and roared again. As an awakener with extremely powerful spiritual power, his voice had already transformed into an invisible, overwhelming giant palm that slapped towards Zhu Yiji again. "You dare!" Zhu Yiji was furious and swung a palm to resist. However, bang! Zhu Yiji couldn't resist at all. His figure was thrown into the air, sent flying high, reduced to a mere speck, not knowing where he had been slapped away to. The other people present were once again stunned. "You should learn how to speak to a leader." Zhu Yiji's aura condensed into a sharp starlight, silently sweeping towards Xiang Beifei. He had to teach Xiang Beifei a lesson, to teach this ignorant man what the consequences of offending him were. "Slap yourself in the face." Zhu Yiji applied the power of the square and round rules to the ground beneath Xiang Beifei's feet. Within this square, the rule Zhu Yiji set was to slap one's own face. You should learn how to speak to a leader. Zhu Yiji's aura condensed into a sharp star light, silently sweeping towards Xiang Beifei. He had to teach Xiang Beifei a lesson, to teach this ignorant man what the consequences of offending him were. Slap yourself in the face. Zhu Yiji applied the power of the square and round rules to the ground beneath Xiang Beifei's feet. Within this square, the rule Zhu Yiji set was to slap one's own face. Zhu Yiji wanted to make it clear to Xiang Beifei who was in charge here, but Xiang Beifei's lips curled into a mocking smile. Are you worthy? Zhu Yiji froze abruptly. His square and round rules had failed again. Then I'll do it myself. Repeated failures drove Zhu Yiji into a fury, his aura instantly sweeping up into an invisible palm, flying towards Xiang Beifei's face. Xiaohei, we need to find someone we know to help us. And by the way, collect a debt, Xiang Beifei said. Woof, Xiaohei asked in confusion. Xiang Beifei stood up, rubbed his fists together, and said, Yang Chengze. Yang Chengze was a team leader at Yenzhou University. He belonged to Zhu Yiji from the Soothing Alliance Department. During the event of Zhu Xinjue changing his name and identity, Yang Chengze also got involved. Under Zhu Yiji's direction, he used his subtle influence ability of SR level to sway some students who suspected Zhu Xinjue was actually Zhu Pengfei. After Xiang Beifei led his team out of the withered forest, Yang Chengze chased after him to confront him and even tried to pin Zhu Xinjue's death on Xiang Beifei. Unfortunately for him, he underestimated Xiang Beifei. However, the last time Xiang Beifei's power wasn't enough to truly influence Yang Chengze's thoughts. He could only slightly guide him, but now things are different. But Xiaohei had already rushed out from beside Professor Guo's feet, extending his little paw, shattering the square and round rules under Sun Hushuan's feet. Minister Zhu. Commander He. You two are going too far. Initially restrained, Sun Hushuan finally broke free and immediately cried out to stop them. Zhu Yiji's expression once again darkened. Sun Hushuan had also broken through his square and round rules, but Zhu Yiji could no longer take action. The events of that day didn't give him the moral high ground, and once he laid hands on anyone, it also made He Kaiwei realize something. He still had a chance to prove his innocence. He had been dragged into this affair, but those words had only been heard by Zhao Yong coming from the mouth of Wu Shixian saying they were under his command. Even if Zhao Yong said so, it couldn't directly prove that the framing was related to him. Right now, the only way for him to clear himself was to sacrifice the pawn to save the chariot, which meant that Wu Shixian must be kicked away. All he had to say was that Wu Shixian was framing him. A hint of coldness appeared in He Kaiwei's eyes. The entire conference room had become tense and confrontational. All of you, stop it. Don't get too carried away. Zhu Yiji finally stood up and coldly shouted. You three dare to cause chaos at the school. Do you really not see me in your eyes? His gaze was like that of an eagle as he stared down the three of them, especially lingering on Xiang Beifei, because he had not even noticed how Xiang Beifei had appeared in the classroom. This made him wary. However, at that moment, Zhu Yiji's aura was soaring. He was still the most powerful person here. He could still suppress these few people. He quickly checked his system interface, detected that Luo Yunxian is enraged. Would you like to spend uniqueness value to enhance your own defense? 10 million. But Luo Yunxian had already raised his hand. When He Kaiwei's momentum hit the invisible barrier in front of Professor Guo, it was as if it had struck a tough city wall. The city wall emitted a strange spiritual power from all directions, dissolving and transforming He Kaiwei's attack, and then directing it back the way it came, striking back at He Kaiwei. He Kaiwei was once again repelled by Professor Guo's counterattack. To be precise, he was repelled by his own momentum. How could this happen? He Kaiwei stared hard at Professor Guo. In the past, he only knew Professor Guo was strong, but because Professor Guo was only in the mid-stage of orifice transforming, he had never taken Professor Guo, who was of SR level, seriously. But he had overlooked one thing. Professor Gua, with mid-stage orifice transforming power, might have limited offensive means and power, but he had the strongest defense in the alliance. This defense was the backbone that allowed him to withstand the attacks of late-stage orifice transforming martial artists. For him, the strongest defense was a counterattack. And He Kaiwei could not shake him. "What's going on? Spill it!" Zhu Yiji shouted. Zhao Yong slapped his forehead and said, Wu Shixian was talking to himself. He said that Zhu Yiji and He Kaiwei both wanted to deal with Luo Yunxian. He needed to take care of Professor Gua, who is close to Luo Yunxian first. So, framing Professor Gua would depend on us to provide false testimony. If he does well, he would be greatly rewarded. Yes. There was someone else named Zhu Yiji, just like He Kaiwei, who directed Wu Shixian to frame Professor Gua. Zhao Yong blurted it all out in a rush. With his revelation, the entire conference room fell silent. The more than 20 leaders of Liangzhou University all gasped, chilled to the bone. Zhu Yiji? Zhao Yong was actually saying that Zhu Yiji was also involved in framing Professor Gua. Keep in mind, Zhu Yiji's frankness without evasion ability was witnessed by all. Inside this black rectangle, absolutely no one could lie. That meant Zhao Yong's current words were 100% true. Zhu Yiji had made Zhao Yong say that Zhu Yiji was also a murderer? Mr. E, how about your spiritual defense? Can you block the influence of UR Awakener systems like Elder Luo? Xiang Beifei asked. Many high-level system awakeners could manipulate lower-level systems with their own systems. Yi Chongfeng's strength and talent were only considered above average in the alliance, so his advantage wasn't great. Barely. Many in the alliance have issues with Elder Luo and want to probe his secrets through me. So I've been forging my defenses with Elder Luo. Xiang Beifei was able to see the blood altar because there was a purple light in the middle of the altar, emitting an extremely intense radiance that was highly penetrating, illuminating the patterns on the cave walls of the blood altar. Bang! 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 Behind Xiang Beifei, more stone slabs began to form walls, attempting to seal the passage, while in front of him pairs of purple eyes rushed towards him. I really don't want to fight you. Xiang Beifei was quite calm, considering these beings were the so-called Chun Ho's holy relic of Fubei, which meant they were the same as the waters and cold chi soil from Other House. He already knew how to deal with them. Whoosh! The breath soil rapidly transformed and created barriers in front of him. The purple eyes that could devour spiritual power, strong enough to kill the ghost mustache of remnant visage, hit the breath soil and were completely blocked by it. Not only that, but after the breath soil was indented by the impact, it wrapped around these beings, and Xiang Beifei could see clearly what they really were. He originally thought they were eyes, but once covered by Xiang Beifei's breath soil, the light on them was extinguished, turning into dim pebbles. The pebbles quickly turned into powder and disappeared. Just now, they had been drained of much power by the red tentacles, and now, facing Xiang Beifei, they were drained once again. The being controlling the purple eyes seemed to have realized something was wrong and stopped attacking Xiang Beifei. Zoom! 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 The purple eyes from all around converged on a cluster of light and shadow in front of him. The small eyes quickly transformed into large ones. Those large purple eyes were made from countless small pebbles, forming two fist-sized boulders that looked eerie. Soon, countless small stones flew from all directions, gradually forming a head, limbs, and a body. In the blink of an eye, a figure resembling a stone creature appeared before him. Yu Meng! The stone creature let out a low, angry roar from its mouth, then raised its massive fist and swung it at Xiang Beifei. Eh? Xiang Beifei was quite surprised. Because the language of this stone creature was also Yu Meng? Whoa! Whoa! But the stone creature didn't give Xiang Beifei a chance to speak. Its massive fist, with powerful momentum, swung towards Xiang Beifei's forehead. Xiang Beifei tilted his head and clenched his right fist, swinging it out as well. Boom! His fist hit the stone creature's fist, but the creature's body shone with a purple glow. This light moved rapidly and devoured the spiritual power that had just condensed on Xiang Beifei's fist. Good grief! This stone creature actually had the ability to devour spiritual power. The spiritual power on Xiang Beifei's fist was devoured, having its might, and a huge shock hit his fist. With a crack, his bones fractured. Zoom! Xiang Beifei immediately withdrew his hand, dodging the punch, and stepped back several paces to the stone wall sealing the passage. A burning pain came from his arm. He had been caught off guard and suffered a loss. The aura of return to the original state instantly enveloped his arm, healing the damage on his fist. Thud! 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 Having the upper hand, the stone creature didn't hesitate. It rushed down the passage towards Xiang Beifei, footsteps booming heavily and powerfully. Whoosh! It swung its second punch. Purple light enveloped the stone creature's massive fist, thundering forward. Xiang Beifei was cornered with nowhere to retreat. However, Xiang Beifei was not at all panicked. Breath soil rapidly covered his fist like a hard earthen armor. With another clenched fist, he gathered his own punch once again. Boom! Two terrifying streams of fist wind whistled through the air and collided with explosive force. This time Xiang Beifei's fist was much tougher. Despite the stone creature's fist-devouring spiritual power, with the protection of breath soil, Xiang Beifei's spiritual power erupted from within the breath soil, unleashing its full force. Bang! The muscular stone creature couldn't withstand Xiang Beifei's fist and staggered back many steps. Mang! The stone creature seemed to be enraged and swung its fists again, rushing at Xiang Beifei, but Xiang Beifei swung another punch faster. His fist roared through the air and struck the stone creature's chin, sending it flying back against the passage, creating a dull sound. Don't make this difficult. It's better for both of us. Xiang Beifei clenched his fist again. The stone creature was very powerful, already at the level of orifice transforming, yet it was no match for Xiang Beifei. The stone creature stood up, seemingly wanting to resist, but Xiang Beifei flashed past, slamming two bricks onto its head. Hum! Golden patterns instantly immobilized the stone creature. Its pair of huge purple eyes clearly filled with astonishment. You! Yumong suddenly poked its head out of Xiang Beifei's body and called out to him anxiously a couple of times. What's the matter? Xiang Beifei had not yet learned the language of Yumeng, and it was only yesterday that Xiaohe had barely understood it. He had intended to use Xiaohe's translation to learn today, but somehow he had ended up here. Yumong pointed at the stone person and then at itself. You. Xiaohe immediately translated on the side. Woof. Xiang Beifei suddenly realized, oh! Yumong nodded. Yumeng. Xiaohe translated in sync. Woof. Xiang Beifei, grasping the situation, said, Don't worry. I won't hurt him. Go ahead and talk to him if you want. I would also like to know what this guy is up to. Xiang Beifei looked at the stone person who was restrained and pondered for a moment before he collected the two board bricks. Once the stone person was able to move again, it lit up with a purple glow and was about to charge at Xiang Beifei again. However, Yumong stood on Xiang Beifei's shoulder and said to the stone person, You. The stone person seemed to have noticed Yumong on Xiang Beifei's shoulder, stopping in its tracks, looking at Yumong with astonishment and indignation, while giving Xiang Beifei an angry glare. Yumong gestured enthusiastically at the stone person. Yumeng. The anger in the stone person's eyes subsided by half as it thumped its chest. Yumeng. Xiaohe immediately translated. Woof. Xiang Beifei, stroking his chin, said, I see. If anyone could see all this, they would definitely be stunned by the bizarre scene before them. A stone person, a tree person, a little white dog, and a human talking in different languages, and they seemed to be having a serious conversation. Boom! They were still chatting, but behind them, there were brain holes still trying to pry the board bricks with red tentacles, the loud booming noises interrupting the conversation. The stone person looked very angry. It once again condensed a purple fist and was about to rush over to stop the brain holes from getting here. But Xiang Beifei stepped past them and walked toward the cave. The stone person sensed something was wrong, immediately turned around, and blocked Xiang Beifei's way to the mouth of the blood altar cave. Watching him fiercely, "Yu Meng, are you trying to stop me? Or him?" Xiang Beifei asked. The stone person hesitated. It clearly didn't want the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage to enter the cave, but it also did not fully trust Xiang Beifei. Boom! The stone slabs behind were being increasingly damaged, and it looked like they wouldn't hold for much longer. "I can deal with them," Xiang Beifei said confidently, knocking the 2 board bricks he held in his hand. Yu Meng on Xiang Beifei's shoulder pointed at him and whispered to the stone person, You. The stone person looked at the board bricks in Xiang Beifei's hand, which were flashing with golden inscriptions, hesitated for a moment, and then reluctantly stepped aside. Xiang Beifei immediately entered the blood altar, which was quiet at the moment and did not flow with blood as it did in Ziho. It was likely there was no blood available to supply the blood altar here since they were still underwater. The lake was strange. Blood simply could not blend into the water, let alone slaughtering other desolate beasts. However, blood was only for ensuring some of the blood altar's abilities could function normally. The main thing was that it could be controlled with the board bricks. Xiang Beifei leapt to the center of the blood altar and inserted the board bricks, then gave a slight twist. The golden patterns immediately began to flow, spreading out and illuminating the entire cave. Shortly after, the cave walls lit up with lines of golden inscriptions, centering on the blood altar, and everything within 100 miles became clearly visible. This also included the brain holes that were breaking through the wall. The brain holes were still very cautious, keeping the remaining ghost whiskers of Remnant Visage close by, wary of being attacked again by an unknown entity. The situation here had clearly exceeded their expectations. Under normal circumstances, they should not have encountered this situation on their trip here. Everyone be on high alert. If I'm not mistaken, that was very likely the human race, the brain hole said in a deep voice. The other ghost whiskers of Remnant's Visage were quite surprised, and one of them asked incredulously, "How could the human race come here, all the way from Jiuzhou?" "This is not something we need to discuss. The local puppet child is clearly out of control, suppressing our perception too much. We must take the puppet child into our own hands before anything else," one of them said. The figure of brain hole vibrated, and its red tentacles rolled again, lifting the board bricks at the front, parting that wall of board bricks as well. Other ghost whiskers of Remnant Visage had already extended their tentacles. In fact, extending their tentacles was unnecessary for them and even harmful. If the tendrils reached out too far in this place, they wouldn't feel anything if they touched something, which is why they had been keeping their tentacles in until now. But now, the purpose of the tentacles was to serve as indicators. Swish! Only one slab of stone remained, and the brain hole could now see the entrance. It snorted coldly and extended its red tentacles into the crack in the stone slab again. Just at that moment, all the stone slabs around suddenly lit up with golden inscriptions, instantly surrounding them all. Everywhere around, square stone slabs were originally floating in the air, being manipulated into various shapes, but now they were almost entirely disassembled by the red tentacles of Brain Hole, leaving everything in disarray. When these stone slabs were all covered with golden patterns, it also put everyone at Brain Hole on high alert. Buzz! Buzz! The stone slab under the feet of Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage lit up with golden patterns too, and before they could react, the golden patterns had already wrapped around their feet, starting to spread upward. The 3 ghost mustaches were caught off guard and were promptly immobilized by the golden lines. The change came too suddenly, leaving them extremely startled, but Brain Hole's reaction was much quicker. He instantly dodged the golden patterns in the air, and while looking around in shock and anger, his red tentacles immediately moved to entangle the other ghost mustaches. The golden patterns also climbed onto the red tentacles, which emitted a powerful presence to counteract the patterns. However, at first the red tentacles managed to cope for a few seconds, but after about 10 seconds, the golden patterns began to spread over them too, and it was vaguely clear that they were struggling to resist. Brain Hole's expression changed slightly. The red tentacles were just an appendage, and although powerful, their strength was limited. Just now, A substantial amount of their strength was consumed dealing with those stone slabs, and he couldn't fathom where such a powerful force had emerged from, as the red tentacles were clearly becoming exhausted. It was that person. Brain Hole instantly thought of the person who had just infiltrated their group, feeling quite annoyed. He also recognized that the golden patterns came from a familiar source, as Xiang Beifei had just used a brick against him, and now seeing all the stone slabs here displaying golden patterns, it was clear the current turmoil was definitely related to Xiang Beifei. But Brain Hole found it difficult to rescue his comrades, as a strong suppressive force still pressed down on him, making him very uncomfortable. The influence of Puppet Child was still affecting them. He cursed inwardly and glanced at his subordinates, who had already been immobilized, and without a second word, he turned and leaped away, trying to escape. Fighting here was too disadvantageous for him. He had to get out of the range of Puppet Child's influence. But Beifei would not give him the chance. The stone slabs in the air rotated rapidly, quickly forming a wall that blocked Brain Hole's escape route. The wall was covered in golden patterns. Brain Hole dodged to the right, but another wall appeared there too. He continued to run to the left, but a wall with gleaming golden patterns was already waiting for him there. Brain Hole gasped for air as a wall adorned with golden patterns appeared on all 6 sides: front, back, above, below, left, right, and suddenly began to close in on him. He immediately used the red tentacle to resist the one in front, but he could do nothing about the walls closing in from the other 5 directions. Thump, thump, thump. With several muffled sounds, Brain Hole was directly surrounded by a cubic structure of stone slabs, trapped like a turtle in a jar. This enraged Brain Hole, as he tried to pry open the cracks between the stone slabs with his red tentacles. But the tentacle strength was being constantly worn down by the golden patterns on the stone, growing weaker and weaker, quickly becoming covered with golden patterns. Damn it! Brain Hole began to panic. Having come here initially to handle the out-of-control Puppet Child with just the red tentacles. But it hadn't occurred to him that the human race would interfere with this matter. He truly couldn't understand why such a formidable person from the human race would appear here, since the human race had always been confined to a corner in Jiuzhou, their territory limited by desolate beasts and unable to expand. But no matter how much he thought, it was to no avail. The surrounding stone slabs were like a coffin, trapping him tightly. He was now like a turtle in a jar, powerless to do anything about it. Xiang Beifei instantly appeared above the stone slabs, peering down at Brain Hole through the gaps. Brain Hole lifted his head to look at Xiang Beifei upon hearing the noise. Despite still not being able to see Xiang Beifei's face clearly, he couldn't think of anyone else but the person from before. You lowly human race actually interfering with our actions. You have no idea what the consequences are for offending our holy race, Brain Hole said with indignation. Idiot! Xiang Beifei simply replied. You! Brain Hole choked on his words, growing even more furious. In his eyes, the human race, like other lowly species, was easily conquered except for their naturally superior physique. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been chosen as their hosts. I take it you won't fess up easily while I interrogate you, so I need to think about what to do, Xiang Beifei said as he stroked his chin. Ignorant human, you think you can extract secrets from me? Keep dreaming. The only purpose your race serves is to provide us with vessels to inhabit. If you dare lay a hand on us, our people will surely annihilate yours. Brain Hole looked down on the human race from the bottom of his heart. They had already learned about the capabilities of the human race and had almost fully grasped their social structure. Most humans simply lacked the ability to navigate the outer desolate wilderness. This man before him might be an anomaly, but he was unlikely to cause any waves. Fine then. With a flick of his finger, Xiang Beifei wrapped a clump of soil from Choho with breath soil, mixing them together. The breath soil transformed into a sword, and he thrust it toward Brain Hole. Hearing the sound, Brain Hole tried to dodge, but the stone tiles enclosed him, leaving him no room to fight back. All he could do was emit red tentacles from the opening in his head, attempting to block Xiang Beifei. Thwack! The breath soil sword, mingled with the soil from Cho Ho, directly pierced through Brain Hole's red tentacles and into his shoulder as well. Ah! Brain Hole let out a shrill and agonized scream. He looked at the sword in alarm and anger, as the blade possessed a terrifying devouring and corrosive capability. It had not only pierced through the red tentacles but also entered his body, causing him to feel a pain in his soul. You, how could you? Brain Hole stared at Xiang Beifei in shock and fear. Such an object that could wound their kind was known in their terms as a holy relic of Fubei, and he had not expected that Xiang Beifei would use it as a weapon against them. The soil from Cho Ho, much like the waters of Mao Ho, had the ability to devour spiritual power. This effect only occurred in the Ho places, and it was capable of restraining the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage, even causing lethal damage to these substances. Xiang Beifei mixed this soil with breath soil, and employing the strong malleability of the breath soil, he fashioned it into a formidable weapon. I don't know what the consequences are for offending your kind, but I do know what the consequences are for offending me, Xiang Beifei said calmly as he pulled out the breath soil sword and thrust it down once more. Thwack! Ah! The heart-wrenching screams of Brain Hole continued without end. Lowly human race, you dare offend our holy race, I will make sure you. Poochie! Ah! Brain Hole's body developed one blood hole after another, corroded by the soil, making them irreparable once pierced. He had never imagined that he would suffer such immense torture, and that this pain would come from the hands of a lowly human. In just a moment, Brain Hole was left gasping for breath, his arrogant aura completely snuffed out, lying on the ground like a dead dog, unable to utter any more threats. His red tentacles were pierced like a wasp's nest, apparently ruined. Xiang Beifei moved the stone slab and stepped on Brain Hole's red tentacles, severing them outright. Trembling all over, Brain Hole looked at Xiang Beifei. Aside from pain, his eyes were filled with terror towards Xiang Beifei. He realized he had greatly underestimated the man before him. Gazing at Brain Hole, Xiang Beifei, wiping his breath soil sword, calmly said, "For the bodies you parasitize, you've slaughtered so many of our people. Each time I see one of you from now on, I will kill one. You'd better pray I don't find your lair." Brain Hole froze. Arrogant. He had never thought that the humans they used as parasitic hosts would dare to utter such arrogant words. To him, this was like defying the heavens, unforgivable. You ain't dare to. Poochie. Another sword plunged in. Brain Hole cried out miserably once again, utterly unable to resist. The pain clouded his consciousness. He knew he could no longer use this body. With that, he transformed into black tentacles that rapidly shot out from the holes in the head of the corpse. But Xiang Beifei immediately encircled this mass of black tentacles with the stone slab. He then pierced the tentacles again with his breath soil sword. The tentacles rapidly retracted, quickly tangling together, and in the blink of an eye, they transformed into a white beast pill. The white beast pill still had an aura swirling around it, but it appeared very weak. Strange. How did it suddenly turn into a beast pill? Xiang Beifei looked again at the other beast pills, pondered for a moment, then carried his sword toward the remaining 3 ghost mustache of Remnant Visage, all bound by a web-like pattern of golden lines, unable to move. "I don't want to die." One of the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage roared furiously at Xiang Beifei. Until now, he could only repeat this same sentence because it was the last phrase spoken by the pioneer he had parasitized before being brutally killed. But what this guy was trying to express at this moment wasn't very clear. "I know you don't want to die." Xiang Beifei, not understanding him, didn't care anymore. His breath soil sword plunged directly forward. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. He mercilessly turned the guy ice cold through and through. "I don't want to die." The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage let out a series of miserable screams. After being stabbed several times by Xiang Beifei, it could no longer bear it and spread out from the body shell, shrinking back into a white beast pill. Xiang Beifei then poked the remaining 2 ghost mustaches of Remnant Visage a few times. He kept his force at a suitable degree, not killing them immediately, but forcing these guys to detach from the parasitic shells. Soon, four white beast pills appeared around Xiang Beifei. So that's how it is. In the past, Xiang Beifei did not quite understand why he had not seen any beast pills when he killed the ghost mustaches of Remnant Visage, which were like Shi Renmei in the withered forest. It was only now that he realized that the true form of these guys is that of a beast pill. During the event at Mao Ho, the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage didn't have time to shrink back and was eliminated by the stream water, while Xiaohei at the time relied on a breath soil handgun, drenching those creatures completely with one shot. But this time, Xiang Beifei did not kill them immediately. He only forced them out of the parasitic shells, and the ghost whiskers of Remnant Visage reverted to beast pills themselves. Xiang Beifei guessed this was probably a self-protective dormant state that the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage adopts in a crisis, or it might be a form of camouflage. These beast pills themselves must lack the ability to move and need a host for activity. This type of species is very cunning and also very hard to kill. You see, in the external wildlands, most desolate beasts would directly devour a beast pill upon seeing one, to enhance their own strength. The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage camouflaging itself as a beast pill could directly shrink back into one, and if swallowed by any desolate beast, it could then parasitize easily, finding a host quickly. But now things were much simpler. Xiaohei. Woof woof. Xiaohei Era swallowed all 4 white beast pills at once, chewing them and refining them into spiritual power crystals. 1 at orifice transforming beginner stage, 3 at god refining later stage. A rich harvest. As for that red tentacle, its strength had gradually depleted and it started dissipating, soon turning into flying ash. Xiang Beifei then searched for the ghost mustaches of Remnant Visage that had just been dealt with by the Stone Man. But unfortunately, these ghost mustaches of Remnant Visage were truly dead. The purple cold light emitted by the Stone Man was very strong, which was also the holy relic of Chun Ho, fatal to the ghost mustaches of Remnant Visage. The Stone Man carefully walked over and stopped in midair not far away, looking at Xiang Beifei with surprise. He could no longer control the surrounding stone slabs because of the golden patterns, and he even could not touch them. Xiang Beifei collected these parasitized carcasses, asking Xiaohei to keep them. Then, he stretched out his finger and poked Yoming's head, saying, "Come on. I need to learn your language so we can communicate better." Yumeng timidly nodded its head. Now, it also understood the difference between Xiang Beifei and the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage. After Xiang Beifei extinguished the ghost mustaches of Remnant Visage, it realized Xiang Beifei was trustworthy. With Yumeng willing to cooperate, learning the language was much simpler for Xiang Beifei. He only needed to ask a few really handsome, elegantly charming, graceful as a pine, thick-skinned, and some other basic vocabulary. Then let Yumeng translate in its tone of voice. Then Xiang Beifei could learn by analogy, and that would be basically it. About an hour later, Xiang Beifei finally mastered the language. "Now you can tell me about the puppet child," Xiang Beifei said. Yumeng. The Stone Man emitted a very dull sound. He looked at Xiang Beifei with some hesitation, particularly focusing on his breath soil sword. That sword looked very peculiar to him, and he even wondered why Xiang Beifei possessed such a powerful sword. But in fact, Xiang Beifei's breath soil sword was really quite simple. As for the mud of Cho-Ho, it could only be used within the range of the mound, and if outside, dealing with the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage wouldn't be so simple. "The puppet child is on you, isn't it?" Xiang Beifei asked. The stone person was silent for a long time, and then pointed at his own purple eyes. "Are your eyes puppet children?" The stone person nodded his head, then shook it. "Yes, but also no." Using the angry Yumeng language, the stone person recounted his ordeal, and this time there was no need for Xiaohei to interpret. Xiang Beifei could now understand. The stone race is born from the stones and has lived for generations near Chun Ho, always guarding it. He possesses it as well. In Yumeng language, the stone person in front of him is called Zhang Yu, the current clan leader of the stone race. For the stone race, their destiny is as if bound to this place, and the teachings passed down through generations in the clan obligate them to guard the life essence stone of Chun Ho. It is said the life essence stone granted life to the stone race. They can only move about during the day. During the day, they can take the form of stone people, but once night falls, they crumble into piles of stones. This is similar to the situation with Mu Yumeng in the Withering Forest. They were originally unharmed. However, 2 years ago, uninvited guests suddenly arrived. The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage found this place and shattered their peace. Quietly, the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage infiltrated Chun Ho, and after tampering with the life essence stone, chaos ensued. All the stone people became extremely weak. Following that, the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage began to slaughter the stone people massively, attempting to snatch the life essence stone. Zhang Yu, who was the clan leader of that generation, fought desperately against those invading ghost mustache of Remnant Visage, retreating to the blood altar. He had no choice but to consume the life essence stone with the aid of the blood altar, and his power skyrocketed. The battle was incredibly brutal, and the stone race was nearly wiped out. But at the very least, he killed all of the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage, preserving the last spark of the stone race until recently, when he once again detected the traces of the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage and clashed with them. Unfortunately, this time the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage was well prepared, and their red tentacles were much more formidable than he had imagined. So today's attackers are the second wave of ghost mustache of Remnant Visage? Xiang Beifei inquired. Zhang Yu nodded angrily. He harbored immense hatred for the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage. At the time of the invasion, the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage had attacked in human form, which was why he instinctively regarded Xiang Beifei as one of them upon seeing him. Did the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage really wait 2 years before sending the second wave? Xiang Beifei found it strange. Logically, after the initial failure of the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage to annihilate the stone race, they should have quickly dispatched more forces to launch a second attack. Yet, Brainhole and his group had only just arrived recently. Could it be that they got lost? The Ho are indeed extremely mysterious. The domain beyond the wild is boundless, with no way to distinguish directions. Without specific guidance, even if Xiang Beifei managed to reach Chun Ho for the first time, he would find it impossible to find it a second time. Could it be the same with the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage? According to Xiang Beifei's speculation, the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage must have divided into many small teams, each searching for a Ho and then looking for the so-called puppet children. For instance, the team led by Lin Long had found Ziho, while the team led by Broken Throat and Shi Renmei probably found Mao Ho in the Withering Forest. Another team of ghost mustache of Remnant Visage likely found Chun Ho here several years ago, but they were unlucky and got killed by the stone race. Hence, a second team led by Brainhole was sent to find Chun Ho. However, Brainhole encountered Xiang Beifei this time and was killed again. I remember your kind can't get close to Ho, but how were you able to manage it? Xiang Beifei asked. Last time during the newcomer contest, when Mu Yumeng chased after Xiang Beifei and his group, he burst into the mountain at Mao Ho and instantly turned into a tree, fundamentally unable to move on Mao Ho, which was like a forbidden area for them. But Zhang Yu managed to do it. Since both Little Yumong and the Stone Race speak Yumeng language and have similar habits, their weaknesses should also be alike. Zhang Yu fell silent for a moment, then expressed in Yumeng language that someone had helped them. Someone helped you? Xiang Beifei was quite surprised. Who? Zhang Yu seemed to ponder how to explain, and after a long while, he started speaking in a very awkward voice, close together coming from a farce tear cloth. When he spoke, it was very uncomfortable, as if his tongue had tied itself in a knot and he couldn't pronounce the lingual sounds at all. Huh? You can speak human language? Xiang Beifei was also momentarily stunned by the imperfect pronunciation. Zhang Yu nodded slightly. He was naturally able to understand human speech and could certainly speak a little, but he was not used to the accent, which made it very awkward to pronounce. The person who had helped him had explained their origin, and since he couldn't express that place in Yumeng language, he used Xiang Beifei's words to explain. Say it again, your pronunciation is very imprecise, Xiang Beifei said. Zhang Yu repeated it with the cumbersome accent. After analyzing for a while, Xiang Beifei finally understood the substandard human speech and exclaimed in surprise, "An envoy from the Extremity Abyss? Are you saying that an envoy from the Extremity Abyss helped you?" Zhang Yu nodded again. The Extremity Abyss. Xiang Beifei was extremely surprised. He couldn't help but recall the mysterious woman who had originally helped Zhao Ruizhong gain access to the unrestrained base. When that mysterious woman saw Xiang Beifei, she suddenly sniffed him and said that he seemed like the warm fire from the Extremity Abyss, bringing comfort. Most importantly, last time his grandfather's system interface also displayed a strange line of text. Descendants from the Extremity Abyss, pursuing the mustard seed in palm. Was it a woman? Xiang Beifei asked. Yes. Zhang Yu replied in Yumeng language. This made Xiang Beifei even more puzzled. The mysterious woman, was she aiding these races? Zhang Yu indicated that originally their race could not have defeated the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage. But the envoy from the Extremity Abyss arrived just in time and taught them how to approach the Ho and how to devour the life source stones to counterattack the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage. Without her, even Zhang Yu would have been in trouble long ago. This place wasn't like this before. Zhang Yu pointed at the Great Lake and continued to explain in Yumeng language. He stated that this area used to be a stone forest filled with rocks, and the entire region where they lived was all stone. But the mysterious woman used a special method to cut the earth, creating a huge abyss, filled it with water, and allowed them to live at the bottom of the lake. Under the water, with the existence of blood altars and the power of life source stones, they could shield themselves from the ghostly visage's perception, greatly limiting the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage. That way, if the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage were to come again, they would have a certain ability to resist. Indeed, the method of the mysterious woman proved effective, and she had laid out specialized defense measures for the stone race. Here, the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage couldn't even distinguish whether Xiang Beifei standing beside them was a friend or foe, and Xiang Beifei could blend in with just a few words. However, what surprised Xiang Beifei the most was this lake. Such a vast lake. It was actually she who sank into it? The boundless expanse of the lake was endless. When Xiang Beifei ran here, he could not see the end of it at a glance, and after flying for a long time, he still had not seen where the shore was. In the end, he could only travel by boat to conserve his spiritual power. He did not know the exact area, but it was definitely more than 1,000 miles. Could the mysterious woman actually transform such a vast land into an abyss? By what means did she accomplish this? Xiang Beifei grew even more curious about this woman. Strictly speaking, slicing through an entire piece of the earth was not really that difficult. For instance, just 2 days ago, Xiang Beifei encountered a massive creature. That behemoth could change the sky with a flip of its hand, and the slightest movement might cause the earth to collapse. Creating a heaven-collapsing, earth-shattering event was not a difficult task for that massive being. However, the fact that the mysterious woman could create such a large lake was absolutely no simple feat. Have your remaining clanspeople always lived under this water? Xiang Beifei asked. Upon hearing this, Zhang Yu stared at Xiang Beifei with a wary face. Xiang Beifei waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I'm not interested in your clanspeople. Right now, I only need one thing from you. A small piece of stone that can devour spiritual power on your body. I need it to guide the way, and then I will leave." Zhang Yu frowned in thought. Xiang Beifei studied him with interest. Zhang Yu was essentially a stone person, so logically, every part of his body should be hard and rigid. But when he frowned, his stony face actually wrinkled together too. Zhang Yu asked in the Yumeng language, "Do you have the same goal as them?" "Who?" "A few years ago, 2 members of the human race came here. They explained their purpose to us. We normally refuse any foreign species, but seeing their friendly attitude, we accepted their request." Xiang Beifei's eyes brightened at this. These 2 members of the human race sounded very familiar. Without even thinking, he knew it had to be Xiang Tianxing and his wife. They would certainly have followed the order of Si Ho as they made their descent. Being identified as friendly individuals meant he was practically a relative. Xiang Beifei immediately said, "Actually, those 2 are my..." However, Zhang Yu's face suddenly showed a hint of anger as he said in Yumeng, filled with fury. It's all because of those two. They made us believe that races like yours were friendly, so when that group of ghostly visage came here, we also mistook them for being friendly, had no defenses, let them take advantage of us, and that led to the annihilation of our clan. Zhang Yu was extremely enraged. Ah, this! Xiang Beifei was stunned for a moment. Could this also be blamed on Xiang Tianqing and his wife? Since when was being too friendly a mistake? Do you know them? Zhang Yu asked again in the Yumeng language. No, I don't. Xiang Beifei shook his head firmly. After all, Zhang Yu had not mentioned the names of those two people, so he might as well pretend they were unknown passers-by A and B. He just wanted a small stone, so there was no point in stubbornly claiming kinship and inviting misunderstandings. Xiaohei couldn't help but burst into hearty laughter. Actually, this matter normally has nothing to do with our human race, and of course it's unrelated to those two people, since our human race has never thought about annihilating your kind. Besides, the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage murdered our people and then disguised themselves as us to commit more crimes. We of the human race also loathe them deeply. It's all because the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage is too cunning. You shouldn't blame those two individuals. Xiang Beifei still needed to clear the name of the human race. Even though there were all sorts of internal conflicts and messes within the race, they still needed to present a united front against their enemies. Zhang Yu clenched his teeth and continued to speak in the low tones of the Yumeng language. I understand this principle. We rarely interact with foreign races and never actively provoke other clans. Those two from the human race didn't have any malicious intent, which caused us to let our guard down. Later, when we saw the injured ghostly visage, thinking him to be one of the friendly humans, we went to save them, only to invite disaster upon ourselves. So that's how it was. Xiang Beifei didn't know how to explain. It was probably because the stone race lived in such an isolated place, seldom dealing with other races, which made them overly simple in character. Or perhaps the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage was too cunning. The people they parasitized were all in a state of death, indeed looking as if they had suffered grave injuries. The stone people, upon encountering friendly folks, were willing to rescue them. Next time, learn to discern right from wrong. There are many races that are very strange. Don't easily trust any outsiders, Xiang Beifei said. I'm doing exactly that now, Zhang Yu said, looking vigilantly at Xiang Beifei. Can't we unite against a common enemy? Xiang Beifei said, feeling helpless. Zhang Yu fell silent for a moment before blinking his purple eyes. A small purple pebble flew out of his eyes. He took it and handed it over to Xiang Beifei, saying in Yumeng, regardless, thank you for your help. Please leave this place as soon as you can. Xiang Beifei was relieved to receive the pebble, glad that he didn't have to resort to violence. He immediately turned and headed towards the blood altar. The blood altar flickered again with golden patterns that gathered around to form the figures of the 28 mansions. The small stone spun and elongated, transforming into a sharp pointer. Xiang Beifei knew now in which direction Siho was. Zhang Yu watched Xiang Beifei all the way, not revealing to Xiang Beifei where his people lived, probably wiser for the experience, still not fully trusting him. In fact, Xiang Beifei already knew when controlling the blood altar that their race, now numbering just over 100, were all hiding in the depths of the lake, appearing very frightened. After obtaining the compass stone, Xiang Beifei made his way to the surface of the lake, with Zhang Yu following closely. Xiang Beifei left the water and stood on the surface, but Zhang Yu did not follow. He simply floated below the surface, watching him. Era flew towards Xiang Beifei upon seeing him, but Xiang Beifei nonchalantly swatted it away with a slap. Watch your step, Xiang Beifei said irritably. Woof woof. Era seemed very aggrieved. The urine it had just sprayed was still trailing underneath, relentlessly chasing after it. Xiang Beifei turned to Zhang Yu and said, the ghost whiskers will definitely come back. Maybe in a few months, or maybe a year. It's hard to say. I suggest you rethink your defense strategy and consider setting up some defenses above the lake surface as well. We can't leave this area. Now we can't even leave the water, we can only wait for them to come in. The envoy used the water to protect us, but in reality, it's like we're trapped. What happens if you leave the water? This happens. Zhang Yu slowly stretched out his hand below the surface of the water, raising it above the water level. Xiang Beifei watched Zhang Yu's hand curiously, wondering what would happen to it. 10 seconds passed. Zhang Yu's hand remained unharmed. Has anything changed? Xiang Beifei asked curiously. Zhang Yu was also slightly startled. Strange? As soon as we leave the water, our bodies disintegrate and can only reassemble at the bottom of the water. Zhang Yu said incredulously. After a moment, he suddenly thought of something and looked at the little Yu Meng on Xiang Beifei's shoulder. Surprised. Right. Why can he leave that area? He can't leave. Xiang Beifei turned his head and glanced at little Yu Meng, who also scratched his head in confusion. We can't leave, we can't go too far from the fortress, especially here. After the lake fills up, we can't even stick our heads or arms out of the water. But why? Zhang Yu carefully surfaced from the water. His entire body stepped out onto a large rock and was utterly shocked. I can leave the bottom of the water? Zhang Yu murmured to himself. Xiang Beifei thought of something and stepped back a few steps. While Zhang Yu was still in awe, Xiang Beifei moved away a little farther. Zhang Yu gasped, and immediately his body's joints cracked open, crumbling into a pile of stones. His entire skull also thudded down onto the rock. What happened? Only Zhang Yu's skull could talk now. His body had already rolled away into the water and splashed out of sight, also utterly astonished. Xiang Beifei hesitated for a moment, then walked a few steps closer to Zhang Yu. Suddenly Zhang Yu perceived something, and his body parts quickly rolled back towards his skull, quickly reassembling into a stone figure. So it really is like this, Xiang Beifei muttered. You, little Yu Meng said from his shoulder, pointing at Xiang Beifei and speaking to Zhang Yu. It's you. Zhang Yu looked at Xiang Beifei in disbelief. You can break our curse. Curse? Xiang Beifei was somewhat surprised. Zhang Yu suddenly became very excited and impatiently explained in Yu Meng language. Our clan has been plagued by a curse across generations. All our people can only live in this place, depending only on this place to survive. This is the curse our race carries. The moment we leave a certain range, we crumble just like that. Zhang Yu looked at Xiang Beifei, astounded. But we have always had a belief passed down that only a free deity will help us break free from the shackles of fate. Are you a deity? I wish I were. Xiang Beifei shrugged his shoulders. Then why do I gain freedom when I'm near you? Why can it leave its dwelling place? If you are not some deity, why can you help me break free from the shackles? Zhang Yu asked urgently. That's a good question. Xiang Beifei stroked his chin and looked again at little Yu Meng on his shoulder. When little Yu Meng first followed him, the same situation occurred. If he went too far away, he would wither. He thought it was a characteristic of Yu Meng, but soon he realized he had overlooked a fact, because the Yu Meng in the withering forest could only transform into a human during the night. However, when little Yu Meng was with him, he always appeared in the form of a little tree person and could change back to a tree whenever he wanted, without many restrictions. This was rather strange. Zhang Yu still insisted on regarding Xiang Beifei as a deity. You are definitely the deity spoken of in legends. There can be no mistake. His eyes sparkled brilliantly as he recalled the methods Xiang Beifei had just employed to subdue him, even with his possession of a life origin stone, and how he had efficiently handled the formidable ghost mustache of Remnant Visage, essentially saving their race. Now, he could also free him from the bounded territory. How could such a person not be a deity? Being this deity doesn't even get me a salary, Xiang Beifei complained. Xiang Beifei shook his head and after a long moment added, I'd better protect you all first. I can help inscribe some defensive patterns for you to foster some self-defensive capabilities. It is best to establish some true defenses. The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage will definitely not rest easily. You all should ensure you survive first and foremost. We will follow all commands from the great deity, Zhang Yu said, filled with reverence and respect towards Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei was indifferent. He decided to apply some defensive abilities from Jiuzhou here, combined with the restriction of the ghost mustache of remnant visage by the life origin stone, to enhance the self-defense capabilities of the stone race. He spent an entire day fortifying the key areas of the stone race's territory before leaving the Great Lake and flying towards Siho to continue his journey. Xiang Beifei flew north for a whole month and still had not reached Siho. The journey was far longer than he had anticipated. At this moment, heavy rain started pouring down from the sky, drenching everything as if a curtain of water enveloped the world. With a vast expanse of water in the distance, and the sound of raindrops hitting the leaves rustling loudly, Xiang Beifei stopped in a forest, planning to wait for the rain to stop before moving on. The forest was lush and verdant, with trees growing wildly tall, each at least 100 meters high, some so wide that even 10 people together might not be able to encircle them. The overlapping leaves in the forest were as large as pot lids, with various birds and snakes taking shelter from the rain beneath them. Xiang Beifei decided to use the breath soil to construct a small earthen house to rest, and to avoid building it too low and attracting the trouble of any reckless desolate beasts. He specifically chose a large tree about 7 or 8 meters in diameter. He attached the breath soil to the branches of this tree, about 30 meters high, creating something akin to a treehouse. The earthen house was sealed tightly, impervious to the raging rain outside. Within the breath soil hut, it remained warm and fresh. He even deliberately covered the exterior of the breath soil with golden patterned bricks to prevent any desolate beasts from causing trouble. After settling everything, Xiang Beifei sat down cross-legged. With a thought, a stone tower appeared in his hands. Speaking of which, what exactly is this thing for? Xiang Beifei pondered, examining the stone tower in his hands. This was a newly unlocked power from the Wei constellation, a capability from the 12th constellation. It had cost him 3 early-stage spiritual power crystals. Wei constellation. Stone tower. The spirit-gathering book still offered a very simplistic introduction, infuriatingly simple. By now, the later constellations had increasingly frustrated Xiang Beifei, unlike the previous ones which provided very concrete abilities that greatly assisted him. Like the previous stele, he had no clue what purpose this stone tower served. The tower had 9 levels and was hollow inside. Even the craftsmanship was quite rough, lacking any specific engravings. However, inside the tower flickered bunches of faint flames, each flame no bigger than a thumb, floating in the center of each level. They appeared extremely feeble, as if they could extinguish at any moment. Nevertheless, flames were present from the 2nd to the 8th level, notably absent only on the 1st and 9th levels, as if the flames in those 2 levels had extinguished. Xiang Beifei couldn't fathom the abilities of the tower. He tried channeling his spiritual power into the stone tower, but it showed no response. Xiang even dripped his own blood onto it, hoping for a blood recognition ritual, but unfortunately, the tower still did not cooperate. Could it be that this stone tower lost 2 layers of flame, and that's why there's no reaction? Now, that was the only guess he could muster. If that was the case, he was also unclear about where to search for these twin clumps of flame to replenish it. Xiang Beifei had been studying the stone tower for many days and realized there was still no way to unveil its secrets. He had no choice but to give up and turned his attention to the next constellation. Chamber constellation. The Chamber constellation needed 9 mid-stage orifice transformation seals to be unlocked, which was not a big issue. Lady Qiu and Zhu Yiji had sent him a significant number of system items. What Xiang Beifei was currently unclear about was whether his power had reached the middle phase of orifice transformation. His power had always been a mystery since his path differed from everyone else's, and even he was unsure of his exact realm. If his cultivation was insufficient, then attempting to unseal the constellation would be out of his control. However, he decided to unravel it step by step, just as he did when initially unlocking Era's seals. Xiang Beifei first unlocked one of Chamber Constellation's seals. As one seal was unlocked, no aura leaked out. "Seems not too dangerous," he remarked. Xiang Beifei then proceeded to unlock the second seal, but the Chamber Constellation remained serene as ever. Odd, was this seal particularly tame? However, Xiang Beifei did not let his guard down. How could something sealed in the spirit-gathering book be tame at all? He remained cautious, unlocking it layer by layer slowly. After continuously unlocking 7 seals, there was still no aura dispersing from within the chamber constellation, which puzzled Xiang Beifei even more. However, after a moment of contemplation, he stopped. Forget it, I won't undo the last 2 seals. Xiang Beifei planned to close the spirit-gathering book. However, just as he was doing so, a violent fluctuation suddenly emanated from the chamber constellation in the spirit-gathering book. A surge of black aura swept up, violently charging towards Xiang Beifei. Good grief! I knew it! Xiang Beifei calmly closed the spirit-gathering book. The furious aura of the chamber constellation vanished in an instant, and tranquility returned to the woods. A moment later, he leisurely reopened the spirit-gathering book. You're craftier than Era, that's for sure. Xiang Beifei stretched lazily and glanced at Era, who was lying in a corner, yawning. Initially, Era was restless and eager to break free, wearing its ferocity on its surface. However, the entity from the chamber constellation was much shrewder. It feigned weakness, aiming to catch Xiang Beifei off guard and strike him with a sudden cold arrow. This fellow was obviously much more intelligent than that simpleton Era. Unfortunately, Xiang Beifei was highly vigilant and didn't give Chamber Constellation any chance. Chamber Constellation fell silent for a moment before violently releasing a surge of black aura. This aura was very powerful, almost on par with Xiang Beifei's current strength. It transformed into a corrosive breath and struck at Xiang Beifei once again. Crack! Xiang Beifei closed the spirit-gathering book again. With 2 more seals in place, Xiang Beifei thoroughly suppressed it. Really dishonest. Xiang Beifei no longer paid attention to Chamber Constellation, and with 7 seals unlocked, its aura was almost equal to his own. If he completely removed the seals, Xiang Beifei would likely be at a disadvantage. He decided to let it stay put for a while longer. It seems I still need to grow stronger. Xiang Beifei sat down in the breath soil hut and began to cultivate. He had always kept up with his cultivation. Even now, while he was in a perilously foreign wilderness, it did not affect his cultivation at all. However, Xiang Beifei's orifice perception was different from ordinary people. He had no reference to follow for his cultivation, and currently, he didn't even know what realm he had reached. Xiang Beifei closed his eyes and carefully sensed the orifice soul. The orifice soul now appeared much more solidified, but his orifice perception was quite different from ordinary people. While others could open 7 orifices, he bizarrely had only managed to open 2, 1 black and 1 white. For now, this situation could only be attributed to his cultivation of the Chaos Yin-Yang formula. As for how these 2 black and white orifices would evolve next, Xiang Beifei was unsure. All he could do currently was to slowly sense and cultivate. God refining was about cultivating the spiritual soul, and orifice transforming was about opening an orifice in the spiritual soul, turning it into an orifice soul. All system awakeners needed to open 7 orifices: eyes, nose, ears, mouth, heart, spirit, and body. Only by opening all 7 orifices could one officially enter the orifice transforming phase. If they were lucky, they could gain extra abilities during the process of opening their orifices. For example, their eyes might gain new abilities to see others' meridians and spiritual essence, or their ears might hear sounds from thousands of miles away. Xiang Beifei only had 2 orifices, but he already possessed the strength of the orifice transforming phase. Not only that, if he encountered someone with weak mental defenses, he could even hear their thoughts. Currently, when he calmed his mind and used his orifice perception, he could sense every subtle sound within a radius of 50 miles. Moreover, his orifice perception was very unique. If he applied it to his body, whether it was a desolate beast or a person, they could not detect his presence, even if he stood right beside them. Xiang Beifei's orifice soul had only 2 orifices. He didn't need to open more orifices, but at the stage of orifice transforming, nurturing the orifice soul seemed to require more than just filling it with spiritual power crystals. He needed to comprehend it on his own. Since no one was like him, the experiences of Elder Luo and Professor Guo were ineffective for Xiang Beifei. so he could only explore on his own. Xiang Beifei extended his orifice perception to 50 miles away. Within that range, all he could hear was the sound of torrential rain beating on trees, but he was honing his orifice perception. In the torrential rain, which severely tested his discernment as the sound of the rain almost drowned out all other sounds, he still managed to identify some subtle sounds and, using his orifice perception, visualized the rainy scene in his mind, vaguely perceiving the external environment. 30 miles away, a 10-meter-tall giant frog was munching on its prey. It had just caught a mid-god refining phase python snake, crunching loudly. 11 miles away from the giant frog, a terrifying flood dragon was fighting an 8-armed black ape. The flood dragon had just sprouted 2 horns on its head and looked extremely enraged. Then Xiang Beifei heard 2 faint voices not far from where the flood dragon was battling. When the flood dragon and the black ape are both wounded, we'll make our move and slay the dragon, one voice said. This flood dragon has the bloodline of the divine dragon clan. It has reached the transforming dragon phase. It's very powerful. We can't take it lightly, another added. Xiang Beifei was somewhat astonished. It had been almost 2 months since he left Jiuzhou. During these 2 months, he had constantly been running through the desolate wilderness beyond the domains, without seeing a single living person. The last time he heard human speech was the not-so-standard messenger from the extremity abyss, spoken by the stone man Zhongyu, and then it was the ghost whiskers of remnant visage, disguised as humans. After leaving Chenhou, he hadn't spoken to anyone for an entire month, and he didn't expect to hear human speech here again. Is it the ghostly visage? The first thought that flashed through Xiang Beifei's mind was them, because he didn't know of any other race in the desolate wilderness beyond the domains that could speak the human race language so standardly. He quickly extended his orifice perception towards the 2 people who were talking. The source of the voice was on top of a giant tree 100 meters tall to the left of the flood dragon, where 2 blurry figures stood. These 2, a man and a woman, were shaped just like humans. But what was magical was that they each had a pair of wings on their backs. This did not resemble the ghostly visage. Xiang Beifei was quite surprised when he perceived this. Winged humans? And they spoke the human race language? Bird people? But because the rain was pouring down so heavily, and there was something strange about the rain here that greatly affected Xiang Beifei's orifice perception, he couldn't see their faces clearly, only a vague impression. We need to make it quick and decisive. We can't let others see our appearance, said the woman. No worries, the opportunity will come soon. The flood dragon is a member of the dragon clan, and this flood dragon must have awakened its dragon pearl. Getting hold of it would be a tremendous help to us. The man spoke again. Got it. Then the 2 fell silent again. They squatted there, always keeping an eye on the distant flood dragon. Xiang Beifei wasn't in a hurry. He continued to observe the 2 figures in the distance while also tempering his own orifice perception. While Xiang Beifei was cultivating, the other 3 were utterly bored. Era lay reluctantly in a corner with a golden patterned array outside the earthen house. It didn't like this thing. However, Xiang Beifei had just given it an orifice-transforming phase spiritual power crystal, and it was busily digesting it with its belly filled. Its strength had already reached the peak of late god refining phase, but to reach the orifice-transforming phase, it would still need a lot of spiritual power crystals. It wasn't something that could be achieved by simply piling them up. It also had to cultivate. Or rather, digest? Xiang Beifei wasn't very clear about it because Era didn't seem like it knew how to cultivate the orifice soul. Even Era probably didn't know when it would step into the orifice-transforming phase. It just played it by ear. Xiaohei was lying by the window, tail up, as if taking a little nap, looking rather comfortable. It usually didn't need to cultivate, its combat power wasn't high, but it was clever and tricky. With its advantage in invisibility and wielding a brick, it was an expert in sneak attacks. Yumong sat by the window, sticking out its little feet to catch rainwater. Being half human and half plant, it also needed water to sustain itself. But soon it became picky. It withdrew its roots as the rainwater here didn't seem suitable for its growth. It turned its head, looking at Xiang Beifei, who was cultivating. At this moment, Xiang Beifei was enveloped in a mysterious aura of yin and yang. A faint black and white spiritual power intertwined with each other, producing an alluring scent. Yumong liked Xiang Beifei's spiritual power very much. Being nourished by Xiang Beifei's spiritual power, it had grown quite a bit recently, reaching a height of 1 qi and 4 siyuan, and it could now touch Xiang Beifei's knee when it jumped. Seeing the spiritual power emanating from Xiang Beifei's body, it couldn't resist any longer. However, it always felt there was something strange about Xiang Beifei's spiritual power today, as though it had turned into black and white. But it didn't think too much of it because normally when it absorbed some of Xiang Beifei's spiritual power, he didn't mind. So, it carefully moved closer to where Xiang Beifei was cultivating and then nestled beside the edge of Xiang Beifei's cultivating spiritual power, swallowing the excess spiritual power that Xiang Beifei exuded, its eyes full of happiness. However, it soon realized something was wrong because Xiang Beifei's spiritual power seemed to be unbalanced. It had only consumed a bit of the white spiritual power when its body suddenly began to feel uncomfortable, starting to convulse. Yumong clutched its body as white light surged rapidly, causing its body to swell as if it was about to burst. Just then, a strand of black aura wrapped around Yumong's body, merging with the white light and neutralizing the white spiritual power, calming Yumong's convulsing body. Yumong climbed up from the ground, looking at Xiang Beifei uncertainly. When I'm cultivating, don't absorb the spiritual power I'm splitting. It's very dangerous. Xiang Beifei opened his eyes and patted Yumong's head, chuckling wryly. He then gave Yumong a strand of his complete spiritual power to absorb. After a while, he found it strange that ever since he had orifice perception, his spiritual power had taken on 2 entirely different forms, and he didn't know why. He could only guess it was related to orifice perception, but the more he cultivated these 2 perceptions, the more sensitive his own perception became. Let's go, we've got to take a look at those 2 bird people. Xiang Beifei stood up and called out to Xiaohe and Era. He stepped out of the breath soil cottage, and at this time, the outer walls of the cottage were overgrown with various insects and desolate beasts. These creatures seemed eager to approach, having seen an earthen house on the tree in the rain, whether to seek shelter from the rain or to launch an attack. However, Xiang Beifei had set up a golden pattern on the cottage with 2 bricks, which would paralyze them as soon as they hopped onto the cottage. Therefore, the outside was full of various petrified insects and serpents. Xiang Beifei didn't mind either. He packed up the breath soil and then his figure vanished in the rain, quickly heading toward the direction of the battle. The flood dragon and the 8-armed black ape were locked in a fierce fight. The giant flood dragon's body spanned dozens of feet in length. Its 2 dragon horns were just beginning to emerge, not particularly formidable yet, but it could still control the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. In the area where it fought, the rain fell exceptionally violently, enough to flood the entire forest. And the 8-armed black ape was also very powerful, standing over 30 meters tall. Its nimble 8 arms could lightly tap the rainwater and propel itself a great distance, leaping behind the flood dragon, and then it would bombard the flood dragon with a frenzy of punches. 8 millstone-sized fists pounded on the flood dragon's body. Around its fists, the space itself seemed to twist and turn, as if each was a space-shattering machine. The flood dragon's scales were extremely tough, but the violent force brought up by the ape's punch wind still shredded them. In the face of such absolute power, many of the fancy system abilities of the human race warriors would likely not stand a chance, and even the spaces created by the system would be instantly torn apart. Boom! 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 The terrifying fluctuations spread out, but the flood dragon had the ability to stir wind and waves and vanished in the water with just a blink of an eye. Then its thick tail swept across the black ape, flinging it far away. Crack! The thunder in the sky roared loudly. Blue lightning bolts as thick as buckets chopped wildly at the black ape. Each bolt of lightning made the air heat up dramatically, as if it was about to shatter the very void. Struck by lightning, the black ape let out a pained roar, its fur standing on end, and it kept being pushed back several hundred feet in the water with continuous thuds. However, The ferocity of the lightning continued unabated, smashing down directly from hundreds of meters in the sky towards the black ape. The black ape kept roaring in anger. Although its body was lacerated, revealing flesh and bone, it was truly fierce. After flipping over, it stood up again, ignoring its wounds, and continued to charge forward. But the flood dragon was no easy target either. It violently bared its fangs, biting down on one of the black ape's arms and brutally tearing it off. Fresh blood sprayed forth, staining the rainwater below a bright red, a particularly shocking sight. With a painful howl, the black ape's remaining 7 arms grabbed onto the black flood dragon, ripping open a deep wound that revealed bone on the flood dragon's body. Both desolate beasts were at the late stage of orifice transforming. Such formidable beasts could cause natural phenomena with a mere movement. At their level, all kinds of fancy abilities were merely supplementary. The pure strength of their bodies was the key to breaking all techniques. Both desolate beasts fought with their most primal instincts, and no other desolate beast dared approach within 10 miles. Even those who tried would be overwhelmed by the waves created by the flood dragon, and the aura here was truly terrifying. These are both late-stage orifice-transforming desolate beasts. Could I have entered the wild domain? Perched atop a large tree, Xiang Beifei watched the battle unfold before him, deep in thought. The records of the wild domain and the human domain in Zhuzhou were scarce, only acknowledging the existence of such a place. No one could clearly say where the boundary lay. Indeed, some warriors of the past had ventured into the human domain, but few ever set foot in the wild domain, probably because the pioneers found the desolate beasts deeper inside too formidable to progress any further, so they simply designated the area beyond as the wild domain. Thus, the boundary between the wild domain and the human domain was difficult to determine. Xiang Beifei redirected his orifice perception toward another large tree, where he could vaguely make out 2 winged individuals. These 2 had remained hidden, their attention focused on the battle between the flood dragon and the black ape ahead, not noticing Xiang Beifei behind them. Of course, given their level of perception, they probably wouldn't notice either. Otherwise, Xiang Beifei wouldn't have been able to overhear their conversation. As he drew closer, Xiang Beifei finally made out the features of the 2 individuals. These 2 were emitting a sanctified white glow from head to toe, seemingly shimmering with a faint radiance. Their wings were pure as snow, flawless. They were dressed in white garments, arranged with meticulous care. The male had short white hair and was effortlessly graceful, while the female's long hair cascaded behind her like a waterfall, her features delicate, handsome, and pretty. If not for their wings, these 2 could be said to be exceptionally perfect men and women. By Zhuzhou continent's standards of beauty, they already had the looks of outstanding figures. Coupled with those immaculate white wings, their beauty was indescribable. There were no flaws to be found in their appearance. They were like works of art created by nature, making everything around them pale in comparison. Even Xiang Beifei had to admit that they were the most charismatic pair he had ever seen. Winged beings, speaking the language of humans, without a system, what exactly are they? Xiang Beifei pondered. Just as he wondered whether or not to go out and ask for the full story, the battle between the flood dragon and the 8-armed black flood dragon had escalated. The black flood dragon had already lost 4 arms to the flood dragon, but the flood dragon was covered in wounds, even its abdomen pierced through, its vitality greatly diminished. Their clash had long since destroyed the forests in the entire area, with floods rampant, the earth quaking, and any craters formed in the ground quickly filled in. At that moment, the black flood dragon charged again, its remaining 4 arms moving in a blur of afterimages, the sound of wind and thunder incessant. All of its strikes landed on the flood dragon's body, each hit explosive, swift, and decisive. The flood dragon let out an angry roar, lashing out with its sharp claws at the black ape. A deep gash that reached the bone appeared on the ape's chest, but from its sturdy arms emanated a red glow, grabbing onto one of the flood dragon's freshly sprouted but invisible horns, and with a fierce cleave, one of the dragon's horns snapped right off. However, the flood dragon seized the opportunity. Its tail surged across with a crack sound, and the black ape's head was sent flying, tumbling into the sea. The colossal headless corpse stood in place, with vast quantities of bright red blood spurting from its neck like a surging blood fountain, dyeing the water's surface red for dozens of miles, a harrowing sight. After swaying for a few moments, the headless ape body fell with a crash into the floodwaters, causing massive waves akin to a tidal surge, half submerged by the flood. The flood dragon had defeated the 8-armed black ape, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. Its own vital energy was halved, appearing on the brink of death. One of its newly grown horns was broken, its tail severed, scales nearly all stripped, blood ceaselessly flowing, evidently lacking the strength to fight any longer. And at that moment, the two winged beings, who had been waiting to reap the benefits of a fisherman, finally decided to make their move. They exchanged glances, their sanctified glow reigniting as if celestials descended to exorcise demons, pure to the extreme. Both the man and the woman held a long sword, the blades emitting a white gleam, the most pure and holy swords in the world. Their immaculate wings fluttered, and they soared into the sky, leaving behind a divine glow in the air as they moved. The pair alighted above the flood dragon, looking down like deities descending from heaven upon the battered creature below. The flood dragon clearly sensed something amiss. It had not expected that right after dispatching one invader, two more had arrived. It let out a deep growl at them, its eyes filled with hostility. The holy woman pointed her sacred sword at the flood dragon and said, "Black flood dragon, for your own selfish desires, you caused floods, destroyed the forest, and harmed countless lives, having committed grave sins." As she spoke, the sword in her hand emanated an aura that doubled in tumultuous power. The man drew his divine sword as well, aiming it at the flood dragon. "Your nature is savage, your killings too numerous and your sins too deep, to prevent you from further endangering all sentient beings in this region. We've come to cleanse your violent nature and purify your soul." After saying this, the strength of his presence surpassed even before. "May the divine Lord forgive your transgressions after your death, and may you return to the embrace of the divine Lord soon." Both spoke in unison, their voices resonating all around, like ethereal music, lofty and melodious, filled with light and hope, while the glow of their sword blades became increasingly sanctified and powerful. These two characters spoke with such conviction that even Xiang Beifei was taken aback. Wait, were these two fellows here to administer justice on behalf of Tianqing? Were they here to avenge the desolate beasts that suffered because of the destruction of this forest? With such a holy and radiant image, with such an imposing and righteous pronouncement, every word that popped out of their mouths seemed like it carried the sanctity of justice, coming into the world exclusively for the sake of righteousness. If Xiang Beifei hadn't known that they had just been standing by, doing nothing, he would have almost believed in these two birds' nonsense. "You, Era, if you truly wanted to administer justice on behalf of Tianqing and cleanse someone's spiritual power, why did you just watch the show earlier without intervening? Wait until everyone is injured and then come out to deliver pretty speeches? Can you be any more hypocritical?" But Xiang Beifei soon noticed something unusual, because after the two of them made their statements, the white sacred swords in their hands grew increasingly brilliant, as if the words were like a spell, activating the spiritual power. The might of the two sacred swords grew stronger. So the righteous declaration just now was the seal unlocking spell of the sacred sword? While Xiang Beifei was still puzzled, the two holy men and women had already made their move against the flood dragon. A holy white glow surged out from their sacred swords, like a pillar of light sent down by the heavens, falling upon the flood dragon. The flood dragon's eyes were cold as it watched the glow falling towards it. Roar! The flood dragon let out a roar, and a gray light began to shine from every corner of its body, quickly converging together like a cloud of gray surging upward, blocking the white pillar of light. The dark gray light collided with the holy white light, and a violent fluctuation instantly rippled through the air, spreading out and evaporating the floodwaters. The flood dragon arched its massive body, and floodwaters surged around it. From the cloud of gray that it had just expelled, thunder rumbled, followed by a crackling sound as lightning shot from the cloud, blasting fiercely towards the two. This lightning was peculiar, for normal lightning strikes from the sky downward. Yet this one was cleaving from the clouds up into the sky, but that did not lessen its power. If struck by this bolt of lightning, even martial artists in the early stages of orifice transforming would be in trouble. Hum! The explosive lightning hurtled towards the two-winged bird people, but they were clearly prepared. The sacred swords in their hands crossed paths, and a strong sword energy cleaved out, striking the lightning. Boom! 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 The sword energy and lightning collided fiercely, sweeping out terrifying waves. The flood dragon was caught off guard and was sent flying, while the figures of the two were pushed hundreds of meters back. I didn't expect it to be this strong despite being so severely injured, the long-haired woman exclaimed in a low voice. We can't hold back now, the man shouted. The two exchanged a glance, immediately understanding each other's intentions, and then their figures suddenly charged out. An ear-piercing sound emanated from their throats. Screech. This sound was extremely unpleasant, like fingernails scraping on glass, causing people's eardrums to hurt. Meanwhile, the figures who were once holy suddenly shed all their feathers, resembling a plucked roast chicken, with large lumps of flesh and yellow spots bulging on their skin. Even their beautiful and handsome faces were disfigured, their eyes elongated with a sharp keratin layer at the corners, and two sharp fangs protruded from their mouths. Their ears shriveled and pressed against their faces, and their hair bristled like that of a hedgehog, glistening with cold light. Especially on their backs, the wings were covered in lumps, turning yellow and greasy like chicken wings fried in flour. If you sprinkled breadcrumbs and cumin on them, even the neighbor's Era would cry out of craving. Xiang Beifei was also completely taken aback by the huge disparity. They were just as pure as angels before, and in a blink of an eye, they turned into an ugly, lump-covered chicken? What exactly were these two winged fellows? But after the bird people transformed into lump-covered chickens, the sinister aura emanating from them grew even stronger, as if a terrifyingly evil force was bursting forth, and a rotten smell began pervading the surroundings. Soon, these two ugly, meat-winged monsters almost reached the later stages of orifice transforming. Boom! This time, the flood dragon was unable to withstand the powerful force and was blasted away. The man even wielded his sacred sword to sever the flood dragon's tail. The flood dragon howled in agony and a mix of horror and anger. These two bird people were very powerful, probably only its peak condition could have withstood them. But having just fought with the 8-armed black ape, the flood dragon was definitely not a match for them now. The flood dragon, having developed a high level of intelligence by this point, knew it couldn't win and immediately turned and dove into the water, planning to escape. Your soul has not yet been forgiven. Don't think about escaping. The two ugly meat-winged monsters relentlessly pursued the flood dragon, exhaling a breath of black fog from their mouths. The roaring fog tainted the surface of the water, and the floodwater, originally stained red by the blood of the 8-armed black ape, turned pitch black and began bubbling. The flood dragon, hiding beneath the surface, suddenly sprang out from the red water, continuing its escape. And the direction it was heading was towards Xiang Beifei's left. The meat-winged monsters moved swiftly, instantly catching up with the injured flood dragon, ready to capture it. Are we not going to intervene? Xiang Beifei pondered. Such a fight seemed unrelated to him. Even if those two ugly creatures wanted to do something, that was their business. After all, both possessed the strength of the orifice transforming phase, so any confrontation would require quite an effort. But at this moment, Era suddenly growled uneasily, and a green breath burst forth from its body. Whoosh! 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 In an instant, green wooden trunks emerged throughout the floodwaters. These trunks rapidly grew into towering trees, sealing off the two creatures behind the flood dragon. Era, what are you doing? Xiang Beifei asked. A-woo, Era said anxiously. It's becoming a dragon. What's that got to do with you? Xiang Beifei didn't understand. A-woo! At this time, other flood dragons, as if realizing something, also emitted a deep growl. Xiang Beifei then understood and, feeling puzzled, communicated with Era. Do flood dragons also speak a Wu language? You guys don't happen to be relatives, do you? Xiang Beifei exclaimed in surprise. A Wu. Era eagerly hoped Xiang Beifei would help, saying that the fellow looked like a little brother. You're not as powerful as it, and still little brother. Xiang Beifei curled his lip and hesitated for a while but still decided to make a move. Fine, have it fly this way, Xiang Beifei said. A Wu! Era roared softly, signaling its location to the flood dragon. The flood dragon didn't understand where the voice was coming from, but because the language was similar and it was an urgent moment, it made a split-second decision to head towards Xiang Beifei. It wasn't long before it saw Xiang Beifei. Upon realizing that Xiang Beifei was a human, it was taken aback. Its form hesitated, and hostility appeared in its eyes. But then it saw the wooden Kirin, which had shrunk and was standing on Xiang Beifei's shoulder, and let out a low roar again. Go that way. I'll cover you. Xiang Beifei watched the flood dragon calmly. A Wu! Era wagged its tail, urging it to run quickly. In the wild eyes of the flood dragon, a peculiar light appeared. It glanced at Era in astonishment, nodded slightly, and then flitted past Xiang Beifei, disappearing behind him. Xiang Beifei waved his hand. Whoosh! A stone pillar abruptly appeared behind the flood dragon, floating in midair. At this moment, the man and woman immediately shattered the trees in front of them. But when they collided with the stone pillar, they paused and suddenly stopped. Recoil in fear. Xiang Beifei quickly cast a wave of spiritual power to scatter the lingering scent of the flood dragon, then withdrew the stone pillar, leaped onto a nearby branch, and his powerful spiritual power instantly rendered himself invisible again. The man and woman on the other side were only confined by the recoil and fear ability for 5 seconds. But in just 5 seconds, the flood dragon had vanished, disappearing into a river deep in the dense woods. It's gone. The two hovered in midair, looking around. The scent of the flood dragon stopped here as if it had been interrupted by something. For a moment, they had no idea where to go. How careless! To think that a flood dragon transforming into a dragon escaped. The man showed his sharp teeth and looked extremely angry. At this time, they were ugly with grotesque expressions. Unwilling to give up, the two meat-winged monsters searched the surroundings at high speed, hoping to find traces of the flood dragon again and to kill it while it was severely injured. However, after scouring an area of 100 miles, the meat-winged monsters still couldn't find a trace of the flood dragon. This made the meat-winged monsters look even angrier. However, just at that moment, a voice suddenly came from the forest. Hee, I wondered what was happening here. It turns out the two divine envoys are busy at work. A sharp, mocking laugh cut through as a figure flashed into view from among the trees. This was a tall man with numerous thumb-sized bloody holes in his head, as if some sharp claws had violently stabbed him many times, piercing into his brain and killing him. It was Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage. Xiang Beifei, who was watching the excitement from a distance, slightly furrowed his brow. Why do these guys never go away? Wherever I go, there they are. Seeing the man's appearance, with holes in his head, Xiang Beifei had initially named him Brain Hole. But remembering that he had already dealt with a brain hole among the stone race, he pondered for a moment and decided to rename this Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage to Brain Deficient. Ri and the envoy, Yiji the envoy, I trust you're both unharmed, Brain Deficient said leisurely, leaning against a tree branch, looking at the two hallowed figures before him with a sardonic smile playing on his lips. Ri-En was the woman's name, and Yi-Ji was the man's. When Ri-En and Yi-Ji saw Brain Deficient, their pitch-black eyes grew even colder. Why have you come here? Ri-En asked, her expression unfriendly. With such a huge commotion occurring here, I happened to be passing by and came over to have a look, to see if there was anything I could help with. Brain Deficient sized up Ri-En and Yi-Ji, who, at the moment, looked extremely ugly, their bodies covered with swollen lumps, giving them a fierce and terrifying appearance. He laughed again with a click of his tongue. I like the evil side of your moon god race. The fallen version of you is more pleasing to the eye. No need to hide behind that hypocritical facade every day. Isn't it better this way? Why the pretense? Brain Deficient mocked. Are you looking for death? Rian said, her eyes chilling as she regarded Brain Deficient. But Brain Deficient continued to wear a mocking face, not taking Rian's threat very seriously. Yi Ji held back Rian, eyeing Brain Deficient, and with a cold snort, whispered to his companion. Contain your murderous intent. We've caused quite a stir here. Be wary of others seeing this side of us. After saying this, Yi Ji's aura rapidly dissipated, and the holy light fell back upon him. Divine white feathers grew back on his yellow flesh wings, the lumps on his body retracted, and his skin smoothed once more. He was once again the graceful, ethereal, and handsome celestial man. Rian also forcefully suppressed her anger. As she calmed down, the disturbances around her settled, and she once again appeared as an approachable, pure celestial woman, untainted by the dust of the mundane world. Geely, did you see where that flood dragon ran off to just now? Rian's voice regained its melodious and enchanting tone, a celestial music that brought tranquility to one's heart upon listening. She looked at Brain Deficient with sparkling eyes, her demeanor gentle and friendly, making it hard for anyone to imagine that just moments ago, she had been a wingless lump of flesh. Brain Deficient said scornfully, "What? Are you planning to redeem the flood dragon's spirit this time? Do you need my forgiveness for your soul as well with the way you speak to us?" Yi Ji said amicably, as a holy white light radiated from his body, intensifying slightly in a threatening manner. A hint of wariness appeared in Brain Deficient's eyes. "No, I encountered you as soon as I arrived," said Brain Deficient. Rian and Yi Ji lightly furrowed their brows and glanced back at the trees that had been destroyed, saying, "Something definitely intervened to help that flood dragon just now. These trees didn't grow on their own. They were controlled. Isn't your white moonlight capable of resurrecting all things? Why not restore these trees to see?" Brain Deficient asked as he leaned on a tree branch. Rian, use the holy light to restore it, and let's see who dares interfere with our affairs here, Yi Ji instructed. Rian approached the trees that she had shattered, and the hallowed light shone upon them. Her holy light was not only capable of purifying turbid energies, but could also recreate the essence of moonlight, temporarily restoring the broken objects and reflecting who had acted just now. Normally, as long as the trees were bathed in her holy light, they would revive into a forest. However, Rian's expression soon stiffened slightly, for the sliced trees, cloaked in her hallowed light, began to wither away, as if that holy light was some form of contaminating light that scathed the trees to death. How can this be? Rian's frown deepened.